Hello and welcome back to The Movies Made Us Do It. Me and Matt are back. How are you, Matt?
I'm pretty good. See yourself?
I am very, very well. I'm very much looking forward to talking Star Trek First Contact.
Me too.
Yeah, this was a cool choice. Yeah, this was an interesting rewatch.
Yeah.
In some ways, not as the criticisms I had are less so than I thought on second viewing or second viewing. What am I talking about? Like, I don't know, 460th viewing. But I've not watched it for a little while, and
I think I've only got minor nitpicks. I think.
Or certainly, I think the thing is, like, I have issues with it, but they're not as they're just not quite as bad as I remember. And the thing is like I say, I watched this probably last year. I think I watched all the Star Trek movies. But you know when you've seen a movie so many times, you kind of only half watch it, and it's a bit different when you watch it to review it. It's like I got to watch it and pay attention more again. So well, I guess let's start with when did you first see First Contact?
I went to the cinema to see it.
So did I. I have a very strong memory of me and my dad with all of the Next Gen movies, because I was the right age to see them in the cinema. Didn't ever get to see TOS movies. Well, I have seen them in the cinema, but not when they were released. But Generations, First Contact, Insurrection, and that other shit one. Those in the cinema. In the cinema. Nemesis, that's the one, yeah. In the cinema, and this one in particular I have very fond memories of in the cinema, but we'll get into that in a moment.
I'm pretty sure I went from the Final Frontier onwards to the cinema for them.
Right, yeah.
I saw every one of them.
Oh no, you started with Final Frontier. Damn.
I know, yeah. What one to start with? Yeah. I'm pretty sure that was the first one I went to see at the cinema anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's fair. You got to see Undiscovered Country in the cinema when it came out. Terrific.
I did.
Jealous of that. I'm jealous of that. Oh yeah, yeah. That's a masterpiece of a movie. But anyway,
there's a couple. I remember, seeing this in the cinema, and there's a couple of moments where the drew genuine gasps from me, and we'll get to those moments later. But yeah,
we sure will.
There was some serious moments where you were like, ooh, and one of them is like right at the beginning.
Yes, I think I know what you're going to say, and we'll get to it very soon. So let's.
That one sets the tone for the movie, doesn't it?
I think it absolutely does, and I guess let's get to it. Let's start with go through the movie as we always do, and we open with the traditional Star Trek theme, but it then morphs into maybe the greatest original score added to a Star Trek movie since the original movie. I love this theme.
I watched the opening and I thought, "Oh, I do not like this opening."
Do you not like that theme? Oh, I love that score. No, I think it's wonderful.
Do you know what it reminded me of?
Go on.
It reminded me of Band of Brothers. It was like
this predates Band of Brothers, but
yes, it does. But it sounded like a war movie. It sounded.
It kind of does. I'll give you that. It kind of does. But it's a wonderful piece of writing.
Or a war documentary, you know what I mean? Like the world at war. It had that sort of, horns and stuff feel that just sounded a bit like, oh, I'm not sure I like this. No, I didn't like that. I guess I'd never really paid attention to it before.
See, I've maintained this is probably one of my favourite original scores for a Star Trek movie. I think it's wonderful.
The overall score is great, but I didn't like that opening tune.
Not a fan of that opening tune. I love it. I love the way that it goes from the traditional Star Trek theme into it. I'm not a big fan of the title credits. It's really kind of lazy.
Yeah, it's just black with the writing coming up. It's like, that's terrible as well.
It is. I'm a big fan of title credits. I like a bit, something to see while I'm watching the title credits come up. And it's very boring.
It's got a really good opening.
God, I'm trying to think now. The last time I watched that was probably with you when we reviewed it.
It's the stars and you're following a bottle.
Oh,
spinning.
the bottle! Yes, that's tremendous. Yes,
I love.
we said when we rewatched it, the bottle hasn't aged very well. But that aside,
really bad,
in
but it's
concept,
still a really cool opening.
Yes, and in concept, it's a wonderful idea. Here we just get some words in cloudy space. That's about it.
Yeah, cloudy space. Yeah.
But then, of course, the music changes, and we see that we're kind of reliving 6 years prior the assimilated Jean-Luc Picard, or the process of assimilation for Jean-Luc. As we see him as a Borg, and we get some nightmarish visions of the Borg, and I love the Borg redesign.
That pullback of
when it pulls back through the ship,
and going through the ship is like bloody hell. They really
so
spent
good.
some dollars on that one, didn't they? It's like hell.
It looks amazing. I'm assuming it's probably a miniature 96. I'm guessing it probably was. It might have been CG, but it looks fantastic.
Light and Magics were using the IM stuff, so they could have been, but it's fucking beautiful. That pullback shot is absolutely stunning.
It really is. It's
and yeah, the Borg redesigns are amazing. What I liked, I was reading like stuff on it, and they were saying that they wanted them to look like they'd been turned into Borg from the inside out.
And they achieved that. There are some.
Some of them are really grim.
Some of them are very grim. There are some wonderful details on the Borg Queen, which we'll get to when we talk about the Borg Queen. But all of the Borg in this look amazing. They do a really good job.
Don't they?
Yeah, they do, and they do a really good job of capturing the veins, the darkness of the veins that have been infected under the skin.
They do. They look very ill.
Because as terrifying, when you're a kid, or when I was a kid, I guess, as Next Gen was when you first met the Borg, when you see them now, they are just wearing black jumpsuits with bits of plastic on top, and that's fine. It's fine. Yeah. But it's nice to see the facelift, a very faithful. Sorry?
It works for TV.
Oh, it absolutely works for TV, but this is a lovely facelift. It's not a redesign. It's more of an update.
And the process was the process apparently in this TV series it took an hour to put the makeup on and everything.
God.
For the film version it took 3 hours to apply the makeup, another half an hour to get into costume, and then 90 minutes I think it was to take it all off later. And
some of those Borg are on screen for like a second, and then it's like, go take it all off again.
Well, apparently they had I think they said eight.
Did they just recycle them?
Fully done, yeah, fully done, and sort of recycling. And the background ones apparently are just mannequins that they did up.
That makes sense.
So yeah.
But it's paid off. It's a wonderful and respectful update of the Borg, I think, here. Looks absolutely fantastic. And we get this horrendous shot of a needle or a drill. A drill, isn't it? Actually, it's a drill.
Yeah.
Going towards Jean-Luc's eye, and it actually touches the eye when he wakes up.
It does. You can see the lens.
Yeah.
Bend.
You can see his. Yeah, you can see it bend. And
I suppose it did make me think of that awful scene in Picard.
Yeah.
And I thought,
But do you see how much more effective this was without any gratuitous gore? Yeah.
They're certainly not gory, but it was wince-inducing.
It is. It absolutely is wince-inducing. That's for sure. A terrifying scene. And then, of course, Picard wakes up, and he's in his I guess he's in his room, actually, not his ready room. He's in his room, and he washes his face, and then they do an American Werewolf on us.
Yeah,
it's a dream in a dream. As we see it kind of under the skin, and it's
movement under his skin.
Yeah.
And that did make me gasp in that was the first gasp in when I watched this in the cinema. because you do not expect something to come out of his face like that.
No, and in that moment, you have that moment where you wonder, and you're like, Jesus, are they actually opening the movie like this? Is he actually going to have, like, you know, is the Borg tech still just reactivated suddenly, and that the whole movie's going to be like, you know, assimilated Picard?
For the whole movie, that would have been bloody interesting.
It would have been very interesting, but you know, that's not the way they go. He wakes up with a communique from Starfleet Command, and of course, you know, the Admiral Hayes is he's about to tell him some awful news, but Picard already knows.
Yeah, he already knows. Because he hears the whispering, doesn't he? He hears sort of the Borg whisper.
And I guess the nightmare as well, you know, probably tipped him off that something was going on. So the Borg are attacking the Federation. They've attacked Ivor Prime, which is an outpost, I guess, on the outskirts of Federation space.
Presume so, yeah.
Well, I only presume so because...
Whatever is closest to the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah, I only presume so because it takes... I think Data says it'll take him at least 2.5 hours to get there, and the battle starts an hour. Or sorry,
no, it's longer than that, isn't it? 6 hours, he says, that it'll take us to get there.
Oh, it may be. So I'm assuming. What I'm assuming is it doesn't all happen at Earth. They obviously take a long time to get there, and they're kind of blowing their way through forces as they go. Obviously, the Federation have presumably learnt since Best of Both Worlds. So they're now Wolf 359. They've now got better defenses against the Borg. So I guess they're slowing the approach to Earth.
Yeah. What they need is loads of defiance,
or just one Voyager, which will just blow 50 cubes up. But of course, they're in the Delta Quadrant still, so can't rely on Janeway to come and bail you out single-handedly.
Season 2 or 3 at this point.
It was shortly after this film that I think they were like, "Oh yeah, the Borg, they're kind of cool."
Yeah.
And where did the Borg come from? Oh, the Delta Quadrant. Oh well. I'm not going to pretend like that wasn't their plan from the beginning. They knew full well where the Borg were when they said it in the Delta Quadrant. But yeah,
I think DS9 was on their last season, I think, and I think Voyager was third.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the episode when Chakotay finds this, they find a Borg, don't they? And they're like, "Oh, we might have finally found Borg space." I wouldn't be surprised if that episode aired like around the time that this movie came out. I haven't checked, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, because I think they were contemplating bringing Avery Brooks back for the movie, just as a very small cameo.
I bet you can.
I think they scrapped that quite early.
I'm glad, because if Avery Brooks turned up, I'd want him along for the ride. For a one shot, I'd you know, it would have been interesting if they made a movie of him against the Borg, because obviously he has a big beef with the Borg. Arguably a bigger one than you know.
That would be there'd be two like lunatics trying to kill the Borg.
True.
Maybe that would have been a bit too much.
Well, it would have been two lunatics that didn't necessarily get on as well. It would have made for an interesting relationship, because of course Locutus was in charge of the Borg when they entered Wolf 359. Yeah. So, anyway, let's get distracted and talk about how gorgeous the Sovereign class is for an hour or so.
Man, that redesign is bloody wonderful, isn't it?
In my opinion, just my opinion, the movie Constitution, the refit, the original Constitution class, and then the Sovereign. That's how I feel. I like the Sovereign class so much. I put it above Excelsior.
I like Excelsior, and I like the B.
I like the B. I do like the B.
B's got a few little flares here and there that I quite like. You know, around
it's a chunky boy is the B.
It's lovely. I like the B.
The thing you can say about the B is that it could take a pounding and you don't feel like it's going to fall apart. You know.
Yeah.
That neck is thick. You're not breaking that saucer section. No. I mean the B. The B. It's real thick.
Excelsior class.
Real
thick. Of course it is. Yeah. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a stubby neck.
It's a
isn't it? That's
stubby,
the thing,
solid.
it doesn't really
yeah,
have a neck.
it's very stocky and very long. But no,
Yeah.
I think this is a wonderful callback to the Constitution class. It's got the classic Star Trek silhouette. But it looks sleek and modern. It even looks cool to this day. It doesn't look dated. I still love this design. I still think it looks great.
It's still beautiful. The one thing I will say though, didn't like the bridge.
I don't mind it.
Looks a little fragile.
Sure, it's a
I
bit
thought a lot
dark.
of the sort of the console holders, they all look like if you put any weight on them, they'd snap. They didn't look. I mean, the bridge on the D. I mean, that's that thing. That's the chunky big old, panels that are holding those things on. They're not going to fall apart anytime soon.
No.
But this one I thought looked just a little too fragile. I'm not sure I liked the overall layout. Was that, I can't remember whether that was changed for the other movies.
It did. I mean, the Sovereign design got redesigned for each movie as well. It had minor changes. I'm not sure. I think it stayed relatively the same, but I'd have to watch Insurrection to be sure. To be honest.
Yeah, I guess so. I'll have to try and watch the other.
Well, I'm sure we'll get there eventually. We've done Generations,
it's a fantastic bloody shit.
It's a gorgeous, gorgeous design. I love that it's not gratuitous. It's not as much as I love the motion pictures reveal of the Enterprise. I do love it, but
the ship porn.
Porn. We get some great ship porn in this film, but it's never gratuitous. It's like, here's the Sovereign class, no fanfare. It's just here coming out of a nebula, and it's like, oh, it looks amazing, but we move on to the next shot. We're not going to linger on looking at the Sovereign for hours. We spend enough time on the ship as the film goes on, but our introduction, they're just patrolling the neutral zone, and there it is.
Yeah, that's what they're all deserve to patrol the neutral zone, just in case the Romulans decide to take advantage of the situation, which is total bullshit, obviously.
Of course.
It's that we don't trust the anomaly that is Picard in this battle.
And LaForge even says, because obviously it's a new ship, the D got destroyed in Generations, as we reviewed in Generations. And now, even Geordie's like,
it's the most advanced ship.
It's the most advanced ship in the fleet. We should be on the front line. We've been out in space a year, which is like, that's a pretty long shakedown cruise.
That's a long shakedown,
I think we're good. And also, if you were worried about it, why would you have it on the Romulan neutral zone? Surely you want your best ships out there. So they're all kind of like, what is this? But he says, that's our orders, and set a course for the Romulan neutral zone.
Yeah, we'll look at some like gas anomalies and
let's go look at some gas anomalies. And later we get Riker entering Picard's, I think it's his room, or it's his ready room. But there's no doorbell anymore. Like, you used to beep and they used to say, come in, and that doesn't happen.
I think I just presumed that you can't hear it over the sound of his opera playing.
Maybe. Either way, it makes for a lovely shot. One of my favourite shots of the film is Picard listening to the music with his reflection in the window, and then you see Riker coming in and appearing. I love that shot. It's a wonderful shot. And I love the fact that
all of the glasses and all the stuff on the table,
everything's shaking. Yeah.
Shaking with the volume of the opera.
Yeah. And of course Riker kind of sarcastically says we finished our first sensor sweep in the neutral zone, and lists the gaseous giants that they've found and all of that kind of stuff. And Picard's like, well, I'm sure this was well worth our time and effort, And of course Riker questions it. He's like, why aren't we with the fleet? And Picard says they've got every faith in the Enterprise and her crew, just not her captain. Yeah. Their concern is that someone who has been a Borg should not be put in a position where he would face them again. Which, there is some logic to that, I assume, or guess.
I think it's an unknown quantity, isn't it? You don't know what exactly the effect is going to be.
Yeah, I think if I was
completely crumble and have a massive chain link of of fear and self-doubt amongst the crew, and that could fuck the whole ship up. So
yeah, I mean, there is
you definitely understand the thought
logic
process.
Yeah, you can understand the logic. I still think if I was Picard, I would have been like, well, I could just like confine myself to the brig, and then Riker can take the Enterprise.
Well, that's it. I was going to say. I mean,
you don't have to rip right off the whole crew and the ship.
Yeah, Riker's been offered so many commands.
Well, and Riker has fought the Borg successfully in the past. He was the captain when they defeated the Borg.
So, if they were that worried, like you said, you put Picard,
somewhere else
in his room, and you get Riker to command.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that.
Yeah,
I mean, that would be bad. It wouldn't look good.
But you'd at least have your best ship on the front line.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yes, in any case, he's told. I think it's Troy, isn't it? That calls and says that they've engaged.
Straight hair.
Yes, yeah. Her accent's gone as well. Accent's gone now. Forget about it.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there.
It kind of happened somewhere through TNG, I think. It just slowly but surely her accent, her Beta Z accent, just gone.
Yeah.
Never mind.
It just sort of disappeared.
Yeah, sort of disappeared.
You could say that maybe it was just being around the other people that it just dropped away, but
yeah, I mean, it's not a big. These are the kind of nitpicks that when you watch Star Trek a lot, you pick up on, but it's completely irrelevant to the story and doesn't really matter.
yeah.
But of course, yeah. So Picard and Riker head to the bridge, and we hear the communications of the battle starting, and it's not going well. Immediately, it's not going well. There are like so many dead on the Lexington, like 100 or something on the Lexington dead immediately. You hear the Defiant and the Bozeman getting told to fall back, because obviously I guess the position they were trying to hold is already fallen. And Picard's had enough.
I don't think they show it well enough. But I think, can you imagine being Troy on that bridge and having everybody in that room's like anxiety and fear like thrusting at you? That would be awful.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, she picks up on Picard's sort of thoughts and his emotions and what's going on in. But I imagine that everybody else must be in the same position. She must be absolutely getting bombarded with it.
And her own.
Yeah.
And her own. I bet she's. I guess in moments like this, she's probably like, "Oh, just focus on data."
Yeah,
just focus on data.
That's probably a very good thing.
Although if his emotion chip's on, does she read it if the emotion chip works? I don't know. Can she read that?
Yeah. Well, he's got. I think so.
Actually, there might be a scene where she reads. No, she does, because she reads his emotions in the Borg, the rubbish one, the rubbish Borg episode with Lore.
Yes.
She reads his emotions then, doesn't she? She knows his emotions. So yeah.
We also get Crusher's new blonde do as well, which is like, no, don't we get rid of the red locks?
Yeah, what are you doing? Come on. You're not the Crusher I remember.
You're not the Crusher I have on my wall.
Oh dear. So, yes, Picard doesn't even tell Data to turn it off. He walks over and turns off the communications himself, and says, he's about to break the direct violation of their orders, and he is intending to take the Enterprise to Earth to defend Earth. And he basically says, if anyone wants to walk away, I'll note it in my log. And I always think when captains say this in shows, it happens a lot in Star Trek or Babylon 5 or whatever. Yeah. I always think, God, imagine how awkward it'd be if you were the one person that was like, actually, yeah. I'm gonna get up and leave.
Well, actually, I'd like to decline.
Actually, it's not for me.
I think you tend, when that sort of thing happens, it tends to be one of those things with like a number two that has a sort of one of those to and fro relationships with the captain.
I know in B5 there were a few that leave when they turn against Earth.
Yeah.
But generally, I'm assuming that when it comes to the bridge crew, if you're on Picard's bridge, you're pretty well trusted by that point, and he pretty much can assume that they're going to go with him, you know?
I mean, you'd sort of like you. I imagine over the years they've had lots of transfers, and I don't remember what the crew complement is between this and the D.
I don't know.
I don't think there's any families on there like there is on the D.
No, I don't think so. I think it wasn't designed for families.
Yeah, but I imagine that most of the crew would have probably moved over with him.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd have thought by now they'd probably be on his side.
Yes, well, they all are.
You know, they trust his judgment.
Yeah, absolutely, and they all are. And Data says, you know, to hell with our orders, and they get Ensign Hawk.
Yeah, the first time we see Hawk as well.
The first and last time we see Hawk. Ensign Cannon Fodder.
I mean, I'm not that way inclined, but he's a handsome bugger.
He is a very handsome man, yes.
He's like,
distractingly handsome.
That dude is way too handsome for that bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah. Even Riker looks like he's given up.
I was just going to say, he's showing Riker up. Get him off the bridge.
Riker looks homeless in this movie. His hair's all over the place, and like just, especially in this scene, he just looks like, oh god. It's like I think Hawk started, and he was like, I can't keep up with that. I'm too old now. I've had enough. Whatever.
It's probably because he was on directing duty as well. It's like, don't worry about,
he probably was.
Don't worry about straightening me up too much.
yeah. So of course they head off maximum warp towards Earth, where we see the Defiant, valiantly taking a few pot shots. It looks heavily damaged, and more ship porn.
I mean, it looks like almost the entire bridge crew is dead except for Worf and like one other person.
Yeah, and I like that Worf kind of slams his bridge panel and he says, you know, perhaps today is a good day to die. And I always thought, like, did he have a conversation with someone before this where someone was like, I think today's a good day to die? He's like, nah, it's not a good day. I don't think it's a good day to die. And then when he's there, he's like, oh, actually, I think today is a good day to die. Like, oh, maybe today is a good day to die.
And I love the whole thing about this is basically they were like, because at this point he's on DS9, is he? And they're like, what can we possibly do to bring back Worf to the crew?
So like, this one works. This time it works. The subsequent times, bullshit. In fact, I think by the time we get to it's Insurrection, I think, is the worst one. And it's just off screen, and like someone's like, "What are you doing here, Worf?" And the camera pans away, and he's like, "Well, I was just coming back from a conference." Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, "Oh, you bastard! You're not even going to give us a reason anymore." Because with Nemesis, it's like they were there for the wedding, weren't they? So it's like, okay, fine.
That works.
But I think it's Insurrection. It's the one where it's just like almost off screen handled. They're like, "Oh, we want Worf. It's fine." But here it kind of works.
It works. I think it works because of the Defiant. The Defiant was specifically made to fight Borg.
Yeah, and you've got to imagine. I'm not sure at what point this is during the Dominion War. I think that this happens, which is terrible timing for them.
Well, I was going to say, I presume it must be because Worf is there for all that, isn't he? So I guess.
Yes, he is. Yeah, I was just thinking because he's there just before it kind of heats up, isn't he? So I don't know if it might be early on, but
he's kind of there because of all the Klingon presence in.
That's true. The build up of Klingons, on the station and the that area of space with the Cardassians. It might be the Klingon Cardassian war at the moment. But we get some more ship porn. We get the Akira class, the Steam Runner.
Yes.
Wonderful designs.
Akira, Steam Runner, and Saber.
Oh, the Saber! I forgot about the Saber. Yes.
All ships that were created specifically for this scene.
And continued on in canon afterwards, as Star Trek tends to do. All the games, and always remember Star Trek Armada. You always had,
I've flown all three of those ships in Star Trek Online.
yeah. And wonderful designs. And again, nothing is lingered on. And that's what I love about this. I love these shots where it's like we're introducing new stuff, new ships, we're building and expanding the universe, but we're not going to do it gratuitously. It's just a battle's going on, and here are the ships flying around. And it's great. I love the design of the Akira in particular. I'm a big fan of the Akira design.
The Akira's good. I like the Steam Runner as well. The Steam Runner is a weird looking thing.
That's kind of why I like it, because it's so different. It's such a different design. And you can see it was obviously built with a very specific purpose, the Steam Runner class. I think it does some really weird... It was supposed to do some really weird thing with its torpedoes or phasers. I can't remember. There is a story behind the Steam Runner, and it's really weird. I don't think they ever stuck with it, but there's some weird thing it can do.
And the saber is really tiny, isn't it? I think it's like roughly the same as the size as a Miranda.
Yeah, I think maybe even smaller. I'm not sure. It's a very small ship. But of course, they're doing all they can. Worf orders ramming speed.
Ramming speed.
Yeah.
You got to wonder about the rest of the crew on that, though, because you think normally I don't imagine there would be many Federation captains whose like thought would be, fuck this ship, we're gonna ram the fucker. Whereas he's like, as a Klingon, he'd be like, yeah, we're gonna slam ourselves into that bastard.
I also like to picture the briefing on DS9, and they're like, the Borg are back, and Worf's like, okay, I'll command the Defiant, who's coming with me, and all of DS9 bridge crew are like, nah, you go ahead, mate, I'm good, I'm alright.
Yeah, we're good.
Let's sit this one out.
I suppose the rest of the crew would probably be too busy with other stuff.
Yeah, I mean Dominion Sisko War, you could argue, there's a war
Sisko
going on over there.
Is in charge of the station, so you can't really leave the station, I suppose. I guess the only one who you'd think would probably go with him would probably be... Well, I was thinking Chief.
Oh yeah, Chief. Yeah, but then DS9 would fall down the second he left the station.
Well, they got Rob.
Yeah, but come on, it's all about the Chief. Chief O'Brien is the hero of the Federation. So anyway, we finally hear the Enterprise is here, and it kind of swoops past as the Defiant is kind of heading towards the cube.
It's a really great shot.
It's a lovely shot.
That just the passing of the ship as it goes, real close up
with that orchestral sting as it comes through.
Yeah, it's great.
Lovely, a flourish, isn't it? It's like an orchestral flourish as it comes through. So Picard is on the scene and immediately takes command of the fleet, and they all agree. And they're like, actually, yeah. Like, no one else has had any better ideas today, so yeah, sure. Well, listen to Picard. And of course, they beam the Defiant survivors aboard.
Yeah. And question comes in, is there somebody wanting to come to the bridge, sort of thing?
Yeah. So he tells they fire on the Borg cube, but Picard says to fire it this one spot on the cube.
Yeah.
And Data points out
it doesn't seem to have any point. Yeah.
Yeah. There's no point to it, but Picard says, trust me, and they all fire, and it does indeed destroy the cube. But it ejects a sphere, and the sphere heads towards Earth with the Enterprise in close pursuit. I do like the thing, the little interaction. I mean, it's a weird little sort of like aside, but the interaction between Worf and Riker. What dick?
When Picard says to him, take the sort of the tactical, and I love the way he says to him, you do remember how to fire phasers, right?
And Worf looks at him with cold, dead eyes.
I will punch you, motherfucker.
Well, I always thought it's a funny moment, but then when you think about it, you're like, Worf's just lost most of his crew on a ship, and now you're just joking with him about, about, like, dude, the dude's having a bad day. Come on.
I mean, he also says, when he says about he says the Defiant, he says it's
tough little ship,
but it's and he says tough little ship, and he's like little. It's like, yes,
but
tiny.
But Worf, it actually is tiny, Worf. Depending on what shot in DS9, it's ended up being tiny for real. But in DS9, the size of the Defiant in like the first couple of seasons it was introduced, it just changes shot from shot. They just clearly couldn't decide how big the Defiant was. But yes, in canon, the Defiant is actually small. So Worf, it is small, but tough, very tough. And as you said, it's designed to fight the Borg, so it's good that we saw it here.
Yeah, it's got like the phase cannons on.
I love those. I love
when
those
they fire.
cannons.
I love that. That was one of those things where somebody had real fun in like designing that and then coming up with the whole noise.
Oh, the sound, yeah.
Of those phase cannons.
So aggressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a great ship. One of my favourite ship designs, actually. I really like the Defiant design.
I do.
Really
it's a weird little thing, but it's... And you sort of forget that... when you see it, you've got that bit at the front that your brain thinks must be with the bridges, and it's not.
Yeah.
The bridges are on the top. And you have to sort of like rethink where they... the layout almost every time. You think, no, they're not there at the front, they're there.
Yeah, but
it's because of that little bit at the front. I guess it's the sensors.
It's the sensors, yeah, I think. But I also quite like it because I also think, like, maybe that I guess in the the 22nd, 23rd century, they probably have ways of telling what's going on. But you almost wonder whether it is designed to kind of throw you off. Like, oh, that's the bridge. Target the bridge, and it's like actually you're just targeting the sensor. You're not targeting the bridge at all. But yeah, wonderful design. Anyway. So yes, they follow the Borg sphere, and it starts creating a temporal vortex. And the Enterprise finds itself obviously in close pursuit, ends up in the vortex with them, and we discover that the Borg are sending themselves back through time.
Yeah, I like you get the Earth changes.
Yes.
Data says there's more methane and there's like lots of horrible changes in the atmosphere, and it's like population of so many billions all Borg is like fuck. That's not good. No,
and obviously Picard, figures out that obviously they've gone and changed the past.
And I do like just a little line about was like, well, why haven't we been affected? It's like, well, it's because we're in the temporal wake. We're all right at the moment, sort of thing.
Yeah, because of plot reasons.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
this film will end very quickly if we're not.
yeah. That's the end of the Federation and everything after, before first contact there.
Yeah. So. Time travel, it's just issues, so many issues, but it's fine. Yeah. I mean, like, why didn't they just go back without any of this battle or anything? I've kind of I have this like theory that I've got in my head now where I kind of feel like the Borg knew that I feel like because of what happens in Enterprise, obviously we catch up with the Borg from this in Enterprise, and I kind of the mind now that the Borg kind of knew what was going to happen, but they had to send the sphere back because that informed something in their future from the contact they had and all of that stuff. So I'm almost like, in my mind, I've kind of canonized it in my head to where it's like the Borg knew they were going to be defeated, but they had to go back for the sake of their own timeline. They had to go back in some kind of time loop that they were aware of, because obviously the Queen is kind of aware. She talks about the fourth dimension and stuff, and she's kind of a little aware of that stuff, because otherwise it is just like, why wouldn't they have just gone back in time before getting to Earth and then just assimilated everyone?
I think that's the problem is that the time travel stuff makes for really good episodes.
Oh, it does.
But
it really does.
As soon as you start thinking about it, everything falls to shit, and it's like, oh god, if they just did this, if they just did that, if they, and you think, oh no, stop thinking like that, because you're ruining it all.
You have to, because and I mean, by this point we've done away with slingshot round the sun, I assume, because that was the worst one. It's like, well, if anything happens, just slingshot round the sun, problem solved, go back, change it, no worries. You've got like unlimited undos. But we'll ignore that for the sake of narrative, and it's a great story. It's good fun, and I love what they did here because the
original script was going back to the Renaissance.
Really?
Yeah, they were gonna the Borg were gonna stop human development from the Renaissance onwards.
I gotta say that sounds kind of awful. I'm not quite sure how well that would. I mean, it's like your immediate reaction is that's really cool. Then you think about it, you're like, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, well, they were going to apparently make Data Leonardo da Vinci's apprentice and stuff, and it's like, oh, this is all getting into sort of like Voyager territory.
I was going to say, would they get the same actor to continue?
Yeah, they were what's his name, Rhys Davies.
Yeah.
To read the Da Vinci again.
But yeah, so
they quickly decided no, let's not do that, which is like thankfully, because I think that would have been very odd.
Yeah, I mean, this is a much better idea, I think, because this makes I love the idea of this story.
Yeah.
So of course they come out of the temporal vortex as it collapses, and they appear outside Earth, and they're pretty sure it's sometime after the Third World War, but obviously everything.
10 years after the Third World War.
But everything's kind of knackered from going through the temporal vortex.
Something.
Sorry?
I think it's 2060 something.
Right. 2063, according to this.
Yeah.
So it's they notice that the sphere is firing at the surface. Actually, sorry, we missed the shot, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah, we get the
shot of Montana.
Cochrane and
Lily. Yeah.
Coming out of the bar, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And, I love that. It's good to see that, even when everything's going to shit, there's always a bar open.
Yeah, because they think they obviously the Borg rain, phaser fire down upon the town, and
she says, "What's that up there?" And he's like, "That's the constellation of Leo."
Yeah.
Which apparently is where Wolf 359 is.
Oh, that's a nice nod. I didn't notice.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I read.
That's really cool.
So then they get fired upon. Yeah.
Yeah, and she thinks it's. I think she calls it an ECA.
Something coalition.
Eastern Coalition, isn't it? Which were presumably a faction during the Third World War, or they have emerged from the Third World War. And yeah, the Enterprise arrives, fires quantum torpedoes, and destroys the Borg sphere. And I'm sure we will not hear from the Borg again. They're done.
Well done.
They're gone. And of course, they scan the surface, and they finally realize it is April 4th, 2063, the day before First Contact, which is the date when the human race made contact with an alien species, the Vulcans. We learn, or well, I guess we already knew, but if you were coming into this movie, you learn that it's the first flight of a warp-capable craft from Earth is what brings the Vulcans, which is due tomorrow. The Borg have been firing at a missile silo on the ground in Montana, and of course they quickly realize, or Picard quickly realizes, that they were trying to prevent First Contact. So he gets Data and Crusher to head down in an away team to investigate the warp ship, and also find Zephyr Cochrane, the creator or inventor of the warp ship, or builder at least. So yeah, they beam down and enter the missile silo. They find that it's an old. Everybody is dead, and they find a nuclear missile. Effectively, it was built out of a nuclear missile, which is a lovely thought. It's very Star Trek.
Yeah,
very Star Trek. They inspect the rocket, which has got damage. Data kind of says is somewhat damaged.
And then Dilly comes is right below them.
Yeah,
they're sort of at the top, and she's sort of at the fuselage, and she's got a machine gun, and she opens up on them.
Yeah.
Picard says, we're here to help. It's like that's another moment where I went, like, one of the first times you go, ooh, because you get she
the
says
bullshit.
Ooh,
but
swearing in Star Trek.
But appropriate.
Yes,
because of the era and the time they were in. Fine. It's not an admiral.
Or double dumbass.
or double dumbass. Well, that was they were just getting into the swing of things in the 80s.
Exactly.
That's fine. So Data says that he can deal with it, and he jumps down as Lily fires rounds into Data.
It's a pretty good grouping.
Yeah. And she falls over. She faints, and it turns out she's got radiation poisoning. And Crusher says, I need to take her back to the Enterprise, and we are all going to need to be inoculated from the radiation leaking from this thing. She also argues against
the way she just says, "Don't worry, I'm not going to mess up anything. I'll keep her sedated."
Yeah, we'll see how well that turns out in a bit.
Yeah.
So Crusher returns to the Enterprise, and Picard calls LaForge, because obviously we need our chief engineer to repair the silo and repair the missile.
Yeah.
Or the rocket, even.
We should also say, actually, Alfie Woodyard and James Cromwell, fucking brilliant actors.
Oh, it's tremendous casting. I mean,
they're so great.
They really are. Obviously, Cromwell is nothing like the man we met in Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis.
No. Yeah,
but still a tremendous performance.
Zephyr Colton from Alpha Centauri, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think it's been slightly retconned that that's where he retires to.
Okay, fair enough.
So it's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. That works.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, that does work. I can deal with that. That's a minor change. Excuse me.
Apparently, at some point, I mean, the part was written for Cromwell, but I think they considered Tom Hanks for a bit. But he was busy doing.
I don't know about that.
That Thing You Do, I think he was directing at the time, so he was busy. But yeah, I think okay, because apparently Hanks is a big Star Trek fan.
And that's fair. I can't imagine him in the role, though, to be honest.
No.
Unless it was going to be quite a different role if he.
I can imagine him like more now, slightly older Hanks. Than at the time. But.
Yeah, that's a thought. But yeah, so Geordi heads down, but not before telling co-engineers that they need to look at the environmental controls because it's getting really hot in engineering.
Yeah, and you get those the first two, the poor engineers.
Yeah,
that get done in.
Yeah, so one of them
they don't reveal them either. They've got a nice sort of horror movie build-up.
Even though it's really obvious, they don't reveal them.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we all know what it is and what's happening, but it's a nice build-up. One
continuity thing I really like here is that I think it's Porter, isn't it? He heads into the Jeffries tube, and the lady who I forget the name of, she's outside, and he's like sees something and he shouts, and he's like, "Who's there?" And I love that they had her voice in the background saying, "You talking to me?" Because it's like you wouldn't you? It's like a natural thing. It just kind of adds to that. Like that makes sense. Like of course someone would question like what are you doing? And of course he gets grabbed, like you said, mysteriously, and we don't see what happens. It cuts away. But of course Picard immediately senses this. He hears that whispering of the Borg whispering, and he gets Data to return to the ship with Riker now being in command on the ground.
Yeah. And this is another one that was changed. Originally it was the other way around. Apparently Picard was going to be at the bottom and Riker was going to be on the ship. And this is the first time that Patrick Stewart puts his oar in. This is the first time that Patrick Stewart's like, I think Picard should be a bit more heroic.
Yeah,
more hands-on.
It's right. It's silly, and it gets more silly as these movies continue. This Bruce Willis Picard thing. But honestly, I don't mind it here.
No, this one makes sense because of what it is.
The problem with this movie, a lot of the problem with this movie is not this movie, but it's it's what this movie set in motion. It's the trends that came out of this movie, because this movie did very well. So they basically, from that point on, they were like, oh, I guess Picard should always be a superhero now. And it's like, no, it made sense here because it's personal to Picard. It makes sense that he wants to take the Borg out at any cost. All of that makes sense here. And I think they made the right decision by having Picard on the ship, because having Picard not face the Borg and be on the planet, that would be a real missed opportunity to me. I think this was Picard meeting the Borg again and dealing with that past trauma. I think that's really important.
Yeah. I agree. I think, it's definitely one of those. It makes complete sense for this movie. After this movie, they should have gone back to it.
Damn well stopped.
Yeah, they did not.
No, they didn't. It got worse and worse and worse, and it gets more and more silly. Picard becomes a completely different character in the movies than he was in the series. Generations, he's very much Picard. Here, he's more action-orientated, but it's understandable. He starts off like Picard, and he becomes much more hard-nosed and vengeful as the movie goes on, for a good reason. But then from Insurrection onwards, he's just an action hero, and it's like, what is going on? This isn't Picard at all. Picard immediately questions what's been going on while he's been on the surface, and they say about the temperature having changed, and Picard immediately surmises the Borg are on board. It's the temperature of a Borg ship, I think. And
which I always guess, I don't know why, I always presumed Borg ship would be freezing.
So did I, and I always thought, like, why would they care what the temperature was? It would be irrelevant to them, really. I guess unless there's I guess they operate most efficiently at certain temperatures, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know.
But he gets Data to lock out the main computer. So we got that classic Data pressing buttons really quickly. I always prefer it when he does the voice stuff. Like when he locked out the computer in Next Gen. I love that shot when he just goes on and on and on with some really long code. I love all that. So obviously Picard now knows, and he tells them, I think Worf was going to send a security team to Deck 27 or something. It's really weird. There's a bit of a gaffe here, because he tells them to seal off Deck 27, and then later on he says there's only 24 decks. It's like, what's going on? They were in a made up deck.
What I've read as well, each movie that goes along seems to add decks.
Right. Yeah.
So you get, I think, 29 decks by the time you get to Nemesis or something. I think
it's like, okay. How much bigger is the ship now?
How do these decks keep getting added?
Yeah, it's not the Galaxy class. You can't just keep. There's a lot of space in a Galaxy class, but So they lock out the computer, and they head below decks to. Yeah,
they get their little explanation to the crew. Saying they'll get like 4 shots at the most, and it's
because they're rotating the modulation, because the Borg can shield against things after they get used to it. As the hive kind of, one of them encounters it, then the other's shields will compensate. And they've got a rotating modulation which will be good for so many shots, but then eventually they will adapt anyway. But they'll never adapt to a bat'leth. Yeah, exactly. The Borg have taken control of main engineering, and Picard says, I love this line, because Picard's like, immediately, and it makes sense. I'm not arguing it makes logical sense, but it's funny in the delivery to me, because Picard's like, we can't go shooting in engineering because we risk hitting the warp core. So what we should do is try and aim for the thing that's right next to the warp core. It's like, what? Wait a minute.
It's like, he's the thing that release the gas.
Yeah.
And it'll basically melt all their
organic
parts.
Yeah.
And it's like, you mean those like 2 bars that are right next to the warp core?
Yeah, he's like, we can't risk hitting the warp core, but we should aim for those things that are right next to the warp core. And I mean, they are literally right next to the warp core. So he explains that obviously the Borg are cyborgs. They need their organic parts to survive. They can't survive with just the machine parts. So by eliminating, liquefying their organic components, the Borg will effectively be dead. It's like some plasma coolant, I think they call it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's right.
So Picard then also, interestingly, warns them that if they come across assimilated crew members from the Enterprise, they should kill them, because it will be a merciful thing to do.
Doing them a favour.
And I thought, well, you're doing all right, Picard, post assimilation.
It's a weird thing, isn't it? It's you think, well, you were saved.
And at this stage,
I mean, admittedly, it took a bit to get him back.
It did, and they're stuck in the past. But at the moment, it's kind of relatively contained, and I kind of would have wanted to see. I feel like Picard would have done more to try and help the crew at this point. Maybe not when it's overrun, but at this stage, it's like, okay, well, they're reasonably contained. Like, how many crew member could there really be? You could contain them. Incapacitate them, but he basically says do them a favor and shoot to kill. Meanwhile, on Earth, Riker finds Troy, and she is drunk. I always loved this scene.
I must admit, I do as well.
It's funny.
It's a sweet scene.
It is. So it's funny because she's like, she's obviously drunk out of her face, and he, Riker says you're drunk. And she's like, no, I'm not. And
I am not drunk. Yeah.
I am not drunk. And then she says, oh, it took 2 shots of tequila for him to even tell me that he was the person we were looking for. So don't go criticizing my counseling techniques. But it's like, Troy, you're an empath. You should have known if he was lying when you asked him. You didn't have to get drunk on tequila.
Well, I guess if he didn't answer.
I guess, but she would have known by asking. Surely you would have known.
Also, doesn't everybody know what? If there's a giant statue there, everybody's supposed to know.
Yeah, that's a point. They know what he looks like. That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that. Like, she must have known.
There's a giant statue on that spot.
Maybe I guess the problem is that before they went back in time in First Contact, Zefram Cochrane looked like the TOS Zefram Cochrane. So the statue is of the wrong man until they go back. But yeah, so they're introduced to Cochrane, and he's very angry because Riker's turned off his music because he pulls the jukebox out.
One of the worst Roy Orbison song ever.
And I will say, Doobie
is a terrible song.
I adore Roy Orbison. It's a shit song.
Yeah.
Sorry, I love Roy Orbison, but Ooby Dooby is crap. Lowest tier, maybe the cheapest song they could get. Maybe that's what I added. I don't know, but it's not a good song. So well later
on when during the flight they do much better.
Oh yeah, way better. Yeah.
I love the way he says who's this jerk sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he's like boyfriend. And he's like no, and he's like he sort of leers. Which I love.
Yeah.
And he says this is the good stuff, and he pulls out that bottle. He pours it, and I love her reaction. She's like completely choking on this awful whiskey. He's like, no, that's not so good. And he just throws
it behind him. Yeah. And then of course Troy passes out, and Riker's just like, oh Jesus Christ.
The Riker in that scene is really great as well.
He's fantastic.
He's just reacting off of them.
I love how that scene starts with Riker being amused by it all, and by the end he's like, oh, for fuck's sake, like, this is a nightmare.
Because he's probably never seen Troy drunk.
Well, no, I would imagine not. It's all synthahol, right? So they presumably, unless they've been drinking Romulan ale. Yeah. But anyway, back up on the Enterprise. We've got the 2 teams. No, hang on a minute. Crusher, we missed the Crusher scene.
Oh yes.
Crusher in sickbay. Crusher's in sickbay with Lily, and she's woken up.
I was so happy to see Nurse Agawa.
Yes, and me too. I must admit, I think rewatching it yesterday is the first time I noticed she was there, and I was really happy to see her. I was like, oh, that's great, they got her. That's good. Yeah. Nice continuity again. Nice continuity.
Yeah. Although I will say it, and where is Guinan? She was not. Whoopi Goldberg was not asked to come back, and she actually didn't know. She actually didn't know that about it at all. She was told like later
at
like,
the premiere.
She found out. It's like, oh, you mean I wasn't invited back? It's like, but I thought they would, if they were doing a Borg story, my character would kind of be essential to it.
Yeah, Guinan is I would have loved to see in the new 10 Forward Guinan with her little machine gun thing taking him down. That would have been great.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't know why they chose not to
she's
bring
got
back
that phaser rifle thing, hasn't she, behind the bar?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. I would have loved to see that.
Maybe they just they thought, you know, I guess it you could say after the destruction of the D, she wasn't needed in the you know, the bar there. They didn't.
Well, I guess maybe they don't have a bar.
Civilians. I mean, I imagine they have a 10 Forward, but not
yeah.
It might just be a crew maintained instead of
like Voyager was just 10 Forward was just a place where you could replicate stuff and eat and drink. It didn't have a bar or anything. I mean, I know they had the makeshift kitchen obviously when things happened, but
it was repurposed by Neelix.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's an interesting one.
It's an odd thing, but yeah, I was happy to see Nosagawa.
Yes, but you're right. Guinan is a big missing component from this, especially with her history with the Borg. It would have made sense.
Yeah.
But never mind. She ain't here. So Lily is woken, and we see that the Borg are trying to come through the door. So of course they need to get them out, which is why they woke Lily. I thought this was a good cameo. I was happy with this cameo. To be honest, I thought it was great. Robert Picardo as the Doctor appears, the emergency medical hologram for the Enterprise E, and she's like, it's like about 50 Borg about to break through that door, and he's like, what the hell am I supposed to do? I'm a doctor, not a doorstop. And again, lovely callback to classic Trek. It's a lovely line. It works.
The thing about the emergency medical hologram is it's kind of got like all the bits and the quirks of a load of doctors, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And
so you think like somewhere in there is McCoy.
McCoy stuff would definitely be. I mean, he was head of medical for years afterwards, wasn't he? Yeah. Well, he was still around in the first episode of
Next Gen.
So you'd have thought they'd have used a lot of his little quirks and things.
Yeah, and I love that. It's lovely to think that all of those doctors exist within the EMH, you know.
Yeah.
It's a cool thought. But yeah, so they escape through the Jeffries tube, all of them, leaving the EMH, who suggests an analgesic cream for the Borg.
The Borg implants can cause skin irritation.
Yeah, no shit, skin irritation? Are you kidding me? Like, look at the bloody things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they escape into the Jeffries tubes, and then we see the crews.
So we see that Lily splits off from them
immediately, and no one checks. Yeah. She just goes the other way. It's like, okay, I would have probably put her up front or in the middle.
Well, I think it's because Crusher's initially behind her.
Yes.
And then someone asks like, I think like sort of which way to go or whatever.
Yeah.
And Crusher, takes charge, sort of thing, for obviously because she's an officer.
Yeah.
And they go one way, she goes the other.
Yeah, which is that makes sense. Yeah. But yes, so this is split up into two teams, one led by Worf, the other by Picard and Data. They start to enter the areas of the ship that have been taken over by the Borg. So we start to see the paneling and everything has become Borgified and looks awesome. And
this is always one of those things as well that's always find slightly odd, is the initial guys that find them, they immediately get taken and Borgified, right?
Yeah.
Now I guess you presume they need they need the quick numbers early.
Yeah.
And then when they're there, it's like, oh, they'll ignore you unless you do anything. And you think, why suddenly them? Because later on, they're just willy-nilly grabbing crew members and assimilate them.
The logic of see, this is the big gripe I do have with this movie is the way the Borg are handled in this movie, especially the Queen thing. But yeah, their behavior in this is odd.
Yeah.
Very odd. Like, it makes sense when you enter a Borg ship that the away team are ignored because they're not a threat. They're definitely a threat to the Borg right now. Definitely. The Borg have only got a small foothold on the Enterprise. They're in a very strategically vulnerable position. You would imagine the Borg would just be killing everyone on sight until they're safe.
Yeah.
Because they would definitely be considered a threat. They are a threat. You know.
Yeah, they're not even... yeah, like you said, they're only on a certain amount of decks at this point, you know?
Yeah. And one of those decks apparently doesn't even exist, because there's only 24 of them, and they're on deck 27. But, you know. Wonderful moment where Data's feeling anxious, and he turns off his emotion chip. And I love that line from Picard, where he's like, Data, sometimes I envy you.
I envy you, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I didn't say earlier on as well. It's like, I think Data's makeup and eyes in this are different, aren't they?
They are. Looks very cool, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the colouring makes him look a bit more sickly.
That's true. I wonder if they did it because when he gets the skin grafts, they wanted to show a big kind of
more
contrast.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Because the eyes look... I don't know whether they just look bigger.
Yes.
I mean, it might just be an illusion.
He's noticeably different here than he was in Generations and in TNG. Speaking of eyes, though, as a quick aside, Geordie's got eyes.
Oh, yeah, of course, we've got the eyes. What I like about that is they don't make a fuss about it or anything.
Again, like the ship and like everything else, it's just another day, and this has happened.
There's a couple of shots where you get the close-ups of him, like, you know,
doing the zoom and stuff,
zoom and things. But they don't make a fuss of it. It's like, oh, Geordie's got eyes, and it's like no one says anything. It's like, great. I'm glad they did that. That's good.
Yeah, it's a really nice thing that it's just done, and that's that.
He'd been saying for years, you know, that people can't see his expression.
Oh my god! I mean, finally, LeVar Burton is a tremendous actor from Roots to this, and now he finally gets to fully act and emote. Yeah. But yeah, anyway, just as an aside, I thought we should give a shout out to Geordie's new eyes. So
new eyes.
Yeah. So they meet with Crusher, who comes out from one of the Jeffries tubes and almost gets shot by Worf. And she tells Worf that Lily, who is from the 21st century, is somewhere on the ship, and she's lost and she doesn't know who she is. And Worf's just like, we'll look out for her, don't worry. And she's like, no, seriously though, like, don't be a Klingon. Like, this is a vulnerable person from a completely different era. Their mind is blown. You need to be a bit careful, Worf. Be careful. But I like to think that, you know, Crusher knows Worf of TNG. She doesn't realise how far Worf has come on DS9. Worf's...
Well, I guess he hasn't... It's not that deep into it yet, is it? So
I really should have done my research and looked up these star dates and worked it out. Well, I'll do that at some point. We'll catch up next week.
Is this before... Oh, that's a good thought. Is he... Oh, right. Is he... This must be before he married Jadzia.
I'm going to see if I can find the star date. I'm going to find the star date. Someone... Yeah, there we go. I love these people. Right, so this is 2373, and I'm just looking on Memory Alpha to see if I can find out what happened. The Doctor has just uncovered that Chakotay did not father Seska's child. This is so Voyager is in the Delta Quadrant dealing with its basics. That's what's going on with Voyager right now. They've lost Voyager. They're stuck on the planet.
Right.
What's going on here? So the real identity of Martok has been identified as a changeling, and the war there's a temporary ceasefire between the Klingons and the Federation. That's this year though, so it's happening as this is going on. Sisko captures a Jem'Hadar ship. So sometime during this year, I'm wondering if this is in order. I'm just going to see where we are. The Borg Species 8472, that's all this year. Sometime this year, Voyager do meet the Borg. But yeah, so it's somewhere during the year. Oh no, there we go. First Contact. So actually, yeah, we should bloody know because it's the year that they all changed their uniforms on DS9. That's obviously the bloody year, isn't it? That's a bit of a giveaway.
Great uniforms.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, let's talk about the uniforms. I love them.
Yeah, because it's the first great uniforms, isn't it? Yeah.
I really like these uniforms.
I really like that. It does make it more military.
I know, but this is right. So there's always this argument because people don't like the Wrath of Khan, militaristic, navalistic.
Still my favourite uniform.
I love it, yeah, and I know it's impractical. They're in space. Space isn't that cold. They don't need it, but I love that design, and I really like this design. This grey uniform. I absolutely think it's a massive improvement over the old TNG jumpsuits. I love them.
Oh, the original TNG jumpsuits are awesome.
Well, I mean, yeah, they got better, but I prefer these over even the later TNG outfits.
Yeah, when they start becoming two pieces, it's a lot better.
Yes, but this is way better. I love these designs. These are great.
Yeah. Just having the colour on the collar is
it's nice. It's nice. Yeah, I really like those designs. So yes, so Worf says he'll look out for Lily, and they head on. Yes.
So they get to the engine room, and I like the Data goes to pull the sort of. I guess,
he just rips off the wall.
It just comes off in his hand, sort of thing. Is it? Okay.
Yeah, I guess the Enterprise E isn't as well designed as we thought, falling apart. But yeah, so of course the Borg now are aware that they're trying to access engineering, which does make them a threat. And they immediately start to attack. Picard calls for a retreat because they adapt.
Quicker as well. They thought they were going to get like 4 shots off. They got like 2 at the most. I think.
Yeah, I don't think they get many shots, and the Borg adapt. Picard calls for a retreat, but Data is grabbed. They kind of grab his ankles. They kind of open the door a bit, grab his ankles, and then close the door again.
Yank him in.
Yeah, so he's taken into the hive of the Borg, Picard also sees as Picard's making his escape into a Jeffries tube. He sees a fellow crewman who is being assimilated.
Asking for help, and he shoots him.
Yeah, he does help. He fatally shoots him. And then escapes into a hatch where he meets Lily. He bumps into Lily, and in the kind of I guess ensuing scuffle, Lily grabs the phaser and points it at Picard, demanding to be taken home because obviously she's no idea where the fuck she is. She's like, "Take me home," and Picard says, that's not going to be an easy thing to do. But she says, you better make it easy, soldier, or I'm going to start pushing buttons. And Picard obviously says, okay, follow me, and takes her with him. Data awakes in engineering, and here we get the big Borg retcon. So, Data is restrained on a Borg operating table, and he assures the Hive that the Enterprise access codes that are stored in his neural net cannot be removed by force. There is no way of removing them. And we hear the disembodied voice of the Queen saying that you're an imperfect being created by imperfect beings, which, by the way, that's a great line. I'll give him that as a great line. And also, I forget the actress's name, but the woman who plays the Borg Queen,
Alice Krieg,
is tremendous.
The amazing Alice Krieg.
I criticise the Borg Queen. I am not going to criticise the performance. It is stunning. No. It's a wonderful performance. I hate the idea of a Borg Queen, but
I think that's the main problem, isn't it? It's the case of, one, they should never have had a Borg Queen.
Nope.
However, what you get
is tremendous.
Is fucking amazing.
It is.
I mean, she is.
Yeah, I know.
She
I
is
do know.
bloody sexy. I think she's really sexy, and as weird as she looks, and Alice Krige is an amazing actress.
She's just fantastic, and she's fantastic in this. She. Well, let's talk about her in a second, as we sort of are revealed to her as she comes down with just her shoulders.
That's a bit later, isn't it? I think we get a couple of scenes with her just talking. I think before.
Oh, you might be right. Actually, let's talk more about the Queen when we get to see her, because we can kind of go into it in a little then. But
Data basically says about it doesn't he's never heard of the Queen, and it doesn't make sense that they have someone has a personality sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which of course it doesn't. And I think that the thing about so we'll get to carry on.
But yeah, she says that breaking the code will only be a matter of time, and then we see that Data's head is made of like MDF or something, because the drill goes in and it just looks like they're drilling wood. It's really weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, they start trying to I guess forcibly break into Data's neural net. Meanwhile, on the surface, Riker and Troy and LaForge, I think LaForge is with the telescope, adjusting the telescope,
yes.
and they're like, they've told him the story of the Borg and of First Contact. Oh no, they don't tell him of First Contact. Yeah, they tell him about the Borg and that they're from the future. And he's like, "Oh, this is absolute nonsense." But of course, LaForge shows them in the telescope, and at first he's kind of joking, like, "Oh, I love a good peep show."
How did you do that as a trick?
Yeah, it's a trick.
Looking for the something that's on the lens sort of thing.
Yeah, but LaForge is like, "Well, it's your telescope. It's your telescope." Yeah. And then of course we get the fucking line, you're some kind of Star Trek. Oh no!
Still makes me cringe.
It was for the trailer and it's awful.
When I saw it in the trailer,
it's awful.
It made me cringe when I watched it in the cinema. It still makes me cringe now.
No one,
like all these years later,
no one in the bloody universe that had never heard of Star Trek before would use the term Star Trek.
No.
You just wouldn't use it. It's the most forced line. It's awful.
Yeah, not even he, good actor that he can pull that off.
No way. But of course, Cochrane then obviously starts to believe them. He asks if Lily's up there, and they say that she is. He asks if he can talk to them, and Riker says we've lost contact with the Enterprise and we don't know why. Now, I will say, Riker is fucking super chill in this movie about not being able to contact the Enterprise for the whole movie. He's like, it's fine, whatever. I'm sure they're okay.
He's a fucking good officer, so you'd think
inwardly
he's going fucking hell.
Yeah, I guess he's just not going to show it. Yeah, we'll go with that. He's not going to show it, but he must be concerned, because Jesus Christ, it's not a good situation, is it?
Yeah.
Especially when that ship probably has enough armament to like level the planet.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
I mean, those quantum torpedoes are pretty powerful. So yeah, they inform him that aliens will see his warp flight.
The flight has to go over tomorrow.
Yeah, because they'll detect it and come. And I love that Cochrane's like, aliens, more bad guys. Because obviously that's his immediate assumption. But Troy says, good guys. Troy corrects him and says that they're good guys. They're passing through the solar system on some boring Vulcan thing when they will find Earth and make first contact, because the idea is that in Star Trek, at least, that the general rule is that if they're pre-warp, they're left alone. Once they've discovered warp drive, that's your entry, your key to the universe, and once you have that technology, you're deemed intelligent enough as a race and developed enough as a race that you can be contacted.
That's fine if the Vulcans find you. You're fucked if like the Klingons or anybody like that finds you and enslaves your entire planet. Yeah.
And as we will find out in Enterprise, it's not.
That they never really talk about in later stuff is that in the original things, the Klingon Empire has lots of like slave planets.
Oh yeah.
Which they kind of don't really mention later.
No, we assume. I guess. I mean, the Klingons are such a powerful group. It's almost like. I mean, I can't imagine that the Federation were like, well, you're going to have to ditch all of that I wonder whether it's like.
They probably would be, but
Well, they would be, but you'd imagine that the Klingons are like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. Honest, it's fine.
yeah,
Let's just ignore it.
yeah.
you can't come and check, but trust us, it's fine.
I mean, the thing is, they're not part of the Federation, so they don't have to live by their rules.
No, that's true.
They're
That's
just
true.
allies, aren't they?
They're allies, but you'd imagine the Federation wouldn't ally with them if they knowingly were aware of, because obviously there's the uneasy truce towards the end of the TOS movies. It's a full-blown alliance at this point. Although I guess they have just gone to war, but they're over it again now. They're fine. So Cochrane kind of begrudgingly agrees to continue his work with the Phoenix, which is the warp-capable ship. On board the Enterprise, things are not going well. The Borg have now got half the ship.
I think this is the point with Picard and Lily in the, I guess,
the room that just has a weird window for no reason.
Yeah, I guess it's some sort of storage.
I assume yes, storage, or maybe it's I don't know, or maybe it's a escape pod or something. I don't know what it quite is. It's weird. Actually, there's no seats in it. It can't be an escape pod. It's just like a weird.
I think it's a storage bay.
Yeah, with an opening into space.
Yeah.
So of course, Picard says you want to get back. Here's how you do it, and he opens it and he shows her the Earth from space, and obviously she's blown away. There's
Australia, the Solomon Islands. Montana's coming round in a minute.
Yeah, you might want to hold your breath. Yeah.
It's just something along the lines of you might want to hold your breath.
It's a long way down. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the way that, when he sort of persuades her to sort of hand the gun over, and he says that the setting would have destroyed, vaporized him, probably destroyed half the walls and things. But I love the way he takes her hand when to show her the Earth sort of thing. That's a really sweet moment.
It's a lovely moment, and obviously Lily gives the phaser back, and Picard's like, this would have killed me. It's on the highest setting, and she's like, oh, it's my first ray gun.
I love that.
That's a great line. Meanwhile, Worf is being told that the Enterprise is been over half assimilated, but they've stopped. The Borg have stopped. They've got control of Deck 11. Which has deflector control, and then they've stopped. And they're confused because Worf doesn't understand why the Borg would have stopped, and it's all non-vital systems as far as they were concerned on Deck 11, so it doesn't make any sense. There's no tactical advantage to them stopping there.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we finally meet the Queen, I believe, down in engineering. As Data continues to talk, and she finally descends her shoulders.
I mean, what a fucking entrance!
It's a great, amazing entrance.
You've just got the head and the neck and this
top of her chest, the very top.
Yeah, top of her chest and this wiggling spinal column.
A metal robotic spinal column. And her hair is like wires and stuff. It's such a cool design. And
I love the way that when she's slotted into the body, you get those clamps that come up and literally
just grab
dig
the
into
skin.
her flesh, pull her flesh down.
Yeah,
to sort of pull it in. It's ow, that looks like that really hurt.
It's such a great visual.
Yeah.
It's such a great design.
Apparently that outfit was massively uncomfortable. She got blisters.
I can well imagine.
The contact lenses she could only keep in for 4 minutes at a time.
My God.
So those scenes with her filming, they must have had a lot of, moving about and.
No wonder she initially.
Taking them out,
No wonder she initially refused to come back for fucking Voyager.
Yeah, it was probably a pretty fucking horrible experience.
Yeah.
And it is funny. She said about when during breaks and things, she said that she felt sorry for all the Borg because every time one of the Borg guys went up to the coffee table or something, everybody would move away from them.
Just instinctively.
Yeah, and she said, I did feel sorry for my minions. It's like,
But yeah, her performance is fantastic. It's the idea of the Borg Queen that I thoroughly dislike. The Borg, for people that don't know, are a hive mind. They've always been a hive mind. They've always spoken with one voice, a voice of many, unified.
it depends on who you. There's a couple of different sort of versions. One says that they came up with the Borg Queen basically because they couldn't work out how to use the dialogue with the computer,
Which
the
I think
Borg computer sort of thing.
that is bullshit. Honestly, having watched it, I watched it yesterday with that in mind. I was thinking, like, what if the Borg Queen wasn't in it? And aside from the slightly weird sexual bit that you kind of get in this movie, that one bit aside, all of the dialogue works absolutely fine if it was just the hive mind talking to him.
Which makes more sense for the other thing, which I think they said that one of the producers or one of the guys said they wanted something to be sort of like a sort of a sexier sort of figure that the Borg could use, and it's like, okay, so that makes more sense because of all the the relationship between her and Data and the way he uses,
I also argue. Sort of I mean, that's probably the real reason with sex appeal. I think this also, and we'll get to it later when it comes up in the story. But I also think that the Queen being here kind of makes the need for Locutus completely pointless as well. In Best of Both Worlds, it kind of. It doesn't make a lot of sense for me.
Yeah, if they needed Locutus to be their, like, their
individual,
their individual to speak to the humans, basically, to be their
when they already had one.
Yeah,
like, okay,
that really doesn't make sense at all.
No.
I guess it also takes them further away from being Cybermen as well.
It does, which is,
because let's face it, they are kind of just
Cybermen. Of course they are. I'm sure they were Cybermen. When they came up with the idea, they were like, yep, Cybermen, we want that. It's a great idea. Because much like the Borg, the Cybermen always changed. Every appearance, they looked slightly different, had different stuff, different, they'd evolved. And the same can be said of the Borg. They change and evolve. Every time you see the Borg, there's new bits. But of course, yes, Data's emotion chip is reactivated, and the Queen shows Data a patch of human skin. God, don't want to ask where they got that. But they got some human skin. I'm sure they didn't grow it.
Bastards.
Pretty sure there's some ensign somewhere missing bits of skin.
A nice bag of skin from his elbow.
Yeah. But so they've grafted it to his arm, or a part of his arm, and there's a tiny little patch of skin, and the Queen says that they have different ways of convincing Data. They don't have to forcibly remove anything from him, and she blows onto the flesh, and we see the goose pimples. It's a great shot.
Yeah, it's a brilliant shot,
and
then it is just like, yep. Borg Queen's definitely sexy.
yeah, and she even says, "Was that good for you?" And Data's face is.
Yeah. I think that's a sploosh moment right there.
He is fully functional. We should point out.
Yeah, well,
it has been established.
Yeah, when she does ask him, and he gives the
canon.
same answer he gave in the other thing about.
Gave VR, yeah.
And I like the way that he does say, "When was the last time you used it?" He's like, was it 6 years or something? It's like
he's like to the second, isn't he? Doesn't he start listing it like he always does? Which I always like. I never get bored of that.
No.
So meanwhile, Picard explains everything to Lily, really, the Federation and what's going on with the Borg, and they enter a section where the Borg have basically assimilated everything. And
I do like the way he says the Borg, and she says, "Sounds Swedish."
Yeah, it kind of does. And of course, they're making their escape, but then Picard fires at one of the drones, causing them to immediately turn and start pursuing them. But of course, he enters the holodeck.
What I also like as well is Alfie Woodyard's reaction was genuine. She'd never seen. Yeah, she didn't know what a Borg was. She'd never seen one. So she'd never watched sort of Star Trek or anything. So when what
a loser.
And when I'm guessing next gen.
Yeah. I'm only joking.
Not Brent Spiner. Jonathan Frakes knew her. She was the first person he met when he came to LA, apparently.
Oh right.
So they knew each other really well. I think he sort of like was instrumental in her casting. And yeah, so she when she first saw them, she was genuinely terrified of what they looked like.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, her reaction to her flinching and stuff is real.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that. But yeah, they enter a holo novel.
Yep. We get another cameo there as well.
We do. We get a cameo from the actor who plays Neelix. I forget his name. I don't know his name, but he's great. He plays the head of
nightclub owner.
The nightclub owner, yeah. It's like a fancy nightclub. It's a holo novel, a Dixon Hill holo novel that they enter into. And I would like to point out at this point that for those that watch TNG, in the episode of TNG called The Royale, they go to a casino. They're stuck in a casino planet world thing. It's like a construct of a casino, and it's all based upon the novel that this astronaut had when these aliens found him, and they tried to create the world. They thought his book was like a book about his world, so they took this crap novel and made the casino was his living nightmare world until he died, because they were like, well, this is your world, we'll just make your world because you can't get back because we destroyed your ship and we stranded you here you go. And he's stuck in this nightmare. But anyway, during that episode, Picard is criticizing the novel, and he's like, this novel is crap. He starts reading it and he's like, oh my god, this is awful. I would just like to point out how stereotypical and bloody awful these Dixon Hill bloody hollow novels are, because Picard claims to have such high bloody standards. This holodeck program is not much better than the bloody one in the Royale. I don't think he can be.
But he starts. Yeah, I'm guessing that he starts. He just likes the idea of switching off and going and do something shit. You know?
Yeah, fair enough. We all do that, I guess.
Ethan Phillips is
that's it.
Is Neelix.
Yeah. So yeah, they deactivate. Oh no, that's right. So first of all, we get there and he asks for someone, doesn't he? And he's like, "Oh, this is the wrong episode." Yes, he's looking for Nikki the Nose, and the nightclub owner says, "The Nose." Like, well, I haven't seen the Nose in weeks. He's like, "Oh, this is the wrong episode," and switches episode.
Wrong chapter.
Yeah.
Appear until chapter 6 or something.
That's right, it's the wrong chapter. So they skip ahead as the Borg enter. Turns into a dance, and it's a dance room, and Picard tells Lily to act natural, and they start dancing. And then he finds Nikki the Nose and finds one of his bodyguards, I guess, heavies.
Yeah,
frisks him, and finally finds a Tommy gun. Which he then uses to shoot the Borg dead, because obviously they turn off the safeties, the holo safeties.
That happened. He says, "I turned the safeties off."
Mm-hmm. Then
they basically starts digging into this
Borg.
I mean, he goes full on like schizo in this bit, because he completely opens up.
I mean, he empties the whole clip into this Borg that's probably died in the first shot, and then he goes to bloody hit it with the Tommy gun as well, with the butt of the Tommy gun.
No, he's dead. He's definitely dead.
Yeah, and then he just starts ripping the chest open of this Borg.
And Lily notices that he's got a badge on.
Yeah. And Picard is like fucking emotionless. He's like, yeah, this was Ensign Lynch.
Like, this is one of your people. He's like, yeah, this is Ensign whatever. It's like
Ensign Lynch, I think. It's like he just doesn't give a shit. Like, wow. Yeah.
It's like, and what is it she says? Oh, what is it?
Tough break, or something like that, isn't it?
Yeah, something like him. Oh, yeah, tough break for him, sort of thing. He's like, fucking hell.
Yeah, it's dark. It's dark. But yes, he gets a neural processor from the Borg, which I think has all their commands in it or something, doesn't it? Like,
he connects it.
Manages
He
there
to a tricorder to get sort of information that what their movements are and stuff.
Yes, yeah. So they head to the bridge. And Lily, I think, is kind of blown away by how like emotionless Picard is about the death of his crewmate. Meanwhile, on Earth, we get some funny moments with Cochrane, who is not happy about being seen as like this, savior of humanity. And
I think when I first saw this movie, I was like, oh, can we just not do this?
I love
this
stuff.
Just go back to. I like it now.
I've changed my mind on it. I thought when I
first watched it.
Yeah, see, when I first watched it, I was all about the Borg and disinterested in the stuff on the planet.
Same here.
I'm the other way around now. I love the stuff on the planet. I love the stuff with Cochrane, and the stuff with the Borg kind of bores me a bit, if I'm honest, these days.
I wouldn't say it bores me, but it's definitely it's a nice. I think it's a nice juxtaposition.
It is. It's a nice balance.
Really well.
Yeah.
It's actually. It's not. It's a little silly. It just stops itself being too silly.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, but I like.
I think it's well enough judged that it doesn't quite fall into too farcical.
No, and I do. I love that. The inaccuracy of history. And that Cochrane is seen as this perfect human.
Great pioneer,
Yeah, pioneer. And he did lay the foundation for what is everything that the Federation stands for and everything that modern human society is. But, of course, he's a very different person, and they've met him now. He's a drunk. He's a bum.
Yeah.
Later on, he confesses to Riker that I was doing this for money.
Dollars. Yeah, I was doing.
Wanted to be on an island with naked women.
I wanted to retire to a nice island.
Which, of course, Riker's totally down with.
And I do love the way that the whole crew they're all like, just every time one of them walks past, they're just staring at him and sort of like as they're walking by, and he's so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And again, we get another cameo. We get another.
I love this shot. This is a great shot because you get the bit with Geordi. Geordie's talking to Cochrane about how this whole place is called. I went to Zephyr and Cochrane High School, and all that, and it's great. But what I really love is in the background you can see Barclay approaching. Just like the whole shot, he keeps like walking forward.
He's getting closer and closer, and then he sort of turns away.
Yeah, I love it. And he finally asks if he can shake his hand, and Cochrane's like just not impressed, but he does. He shakes his hand.
Again, it's the way he sort of like he casually sort of like bringing up well, we're thinking of using this for whatever it is for that. And Geordie's like looking at it, and that's you get the
using his new eyes.
But I love the way he's talking to Geordie, but he's just staring at Cochrane while he's
yeah.
It's like copper tubing sort of thing.
Yeah, and of course, LaForge then makes it even worse, saying that I wish you could have. I wish I could get a photo of this, which is silly because he's got like robot eyes. I'm like, I'm sure you can take a photo of this, mate. With your eyes, with your crazy eyes. But of course, he tells him about the statue. That there's a statue there in his honor.
Almost exactly where you're stood.
Yeah. Leaving to Cochrane, saying, "Well, he needs to go to the toilet." And
I do like that. He says, "I'd like to take a leak," and I do like the way that Geordie's like, "What? I can't see a leak anywhere," sort of thing. It's like, what's leaking? It's like don't anybody in your century go to the toilet?
Yeah.
And of course, that's a joke to the whole you never see anybody go to the toilet in Star Trek.
Yeah. So yes.
I mean, I've always that question is always boggled me anyway. It's like people go, "Oh, no one's." You never see people go to the toilet in Star Trek. It's like, do you see anybody go to the toilet in most things?
No, never.
No
show.
You just presume that people go to the toilet. It
never happens.
You not presume that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Why can't you just assume that? I don't
need to see a character go to the toilet to presume that he goes to the toilet.
No, it's crazy.
It's just a weird thing, but yeah, fine.
You didn't even see a toilet until like Psycho, right? I think Psycho's the first time you see a toilet, or a toilet being
the first time you see a toilet. Yeah, on
flushing
screen,
evidence. But yeah, so anyway, yeah, he escapes into the woods, and of course, Riker and LaForge have to try and chase him down. Eventually, Riker's just had enough and stuns him with a phaser.
Yeah, that is brilliant.
He's like, we don't have time for this.
It's a
like,
really undignified sort of thing as well, because
he falls like face down.
He shoots him, and he rolls like into a ditch full of water, isn't it? It's like, damn, that was bad.
yeah, it's pretty bad.
Oh, I love the way that he's like, when you see him, he's sort of like running in different directions, and you've literally got this sort of crew trying not to be sort of like aggressive, but surrounding him at the same time. It's
still, yeah. And they're calling him sir while they're doing. They're like, sir. Please, sir, don't do this.
Weird is sort of like trying to not be aggressive, but ring someone in. It's like, great.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in engineering, Data has even more flesh on his arm. And they're in a brief moment during conversation, he's kind of very, he's given it to the Borg Queen about how awful the Borg are. One of the drones releases a clamp that's holding his arm, and he uses that to escape. He escapes, but one of the drones attacks his human skin, causing Data to grab at it painfully and nurse it, which the Borg Queen then points out. She says, if it means nothing to you, rip it off.
Yeah, if it's that bad, why protect it?
And of course, I do love that she also says that you're becoming more human all the time. Now you're learning how to lie. When he says that it doesn't mean anything to him, and he's just he's mimicking human responses and stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, there is that bit where he's saying about how they, she says something along the lines of "You're like us," and he says, "No, I'm striving to be more human."
Yeah.
And she's like, "But we've evolved past that. We're more than that now. And it's like, yeah, not really.
No, yeah, not really. Not so much.
Yeah. So he's you get that. I love that. The whole sort of like he sort of digs his fingers into the edges of this sort of flesh. And it looks like he's going to tear it off, and he just can't bring himself to do it.
Yeah. And then, of course, this is where the Borg Queen comes onto him. And seduces him, asking him how long it's been since he's been with anyone intimately. And he explains that it's been 8 years, and that he's fully functional.
6 years. 6.
6, 8. I don't know. Yeah, it might be 6. You might be right. A number of years, and then of course they do. They kind of embrace.
Yeah, and I'm guessing they had sex.
I would assume so.
I mean, it certainly suggests that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I would assume so. Yeah. Meanwhile, Picard is on the bridge, or he returns to the bridge, and he explains that the Borg are going to use the navigational deflector to build an interplexing beacon, and Hawk, because Riker is on the planet, Hawk needs to act like Riker and ask the question. So normally it's Riker who's always asking questions like, what does this mean? What does that mean? Now it's Hawk who's like, interplexing beacon? And Picard says, it's basically a big communication device. It's going to contact reinforcements in the Delta Quadrant, the Borg of the time in the Delta Quadrant, who can then come and easily conquer Earth. And obviously all of those Borg in the past will have the benefit of the advanced technology that the Borg have from the future, which again begs the question why they haven't done this before, but whatever, moving on. We for the sake of a good movie, we'll ignore the time travel issues. Time travel always has issues.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's no way that they can gain access to the deflector, however, the deflector dish. So Worf is asked by Picard if he remembers his zero-G training.
Yeah.
And Worf says it made him sick to his stomach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also get that bit where Lily comes through the door, and then she sees Worf.
Oh yeah, he's like, I'm a Klingon. Yeah. So yeah, they head out onto the hull, and I think this is a wonderful action set piece.
It's such a great shot, isn't it?
It's that pan back, as we see, because obviously it starts where he's like, keep your eyes on the hull, don't look into space.
Don't look at the stars.
And it pans back from them, and we see that they're on the underside of the saucer. It's a wonderful shot. It's a wonderful little scene. I love this.
Yeah.
And I think the space suits that they've got in this
really cool.
They're really cool designs. They're a nice homage to the TOS designs, like obviously modernized, but yeah, it's incredible.
They get they get the thing about the modulating the phasers again, and
yes,
they've got to basically split up and unlock the sort of these mag locks in 3 places. It's like, that's convenient.
And there's only 3 of us. How odd. I mean, I guess they knew that when they went out there, but yeah.
Yeah. So they basically split up, and they go to sort of like open these things. And I think one of them started walking towards. I think is it Worf? I think Worf kills the first one, doesn't he? He shoots one, but and then they sort of carry on going.
Yeah.
And I think Worf opens his first, I think, and then Hawk gets his.
It's quite a physical thing, isn't it? And Worf's strong as a Klingon.
Basically use the old code, sort of break some sort of code, and then they've got to pull out this rotating cylinder thing.
Yeah.
And then obviously, Hawk basically gets grabbed.
Yeah.
And I like the way that it just the Borg just grabs him, and he's full of screaming in pain. It's like, wow, that's a it just crushed his arm sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I like the way it just picks him up and walks off with him.
Yeah.
And he sort of like he disappears over the sort of the side sort of thing. It's like, well, fuck.
Yeah.
And then you go to Picard, who it's like he's got his, and then
he shoots. They start shooting drones, don't they? And they start adapting. And I love the shot where Picard shoots the ground, and the air escaping from the hull shoots him up into space.
And he unhooks his boots.
Oh yes, he turns off the gravity, doesn't he?
Yeah, and then
the clamp.
He sort of like propels himself over so that he can open the
Hawk's one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Hadn't actually got it open yet, had he?
No. And of course, Worf is attacked by a drone, which cuts his suit. And Worf pulls out, I forget the name of them, not the Batliff.
Macliff?
Something like that. And kills the drone. And I love this because this stays in continuity for the rest of this scene. This Borg with magnetic clamps on his boots that's now dead is just hanging about on the hull. He's just stuck to the hull.
With his arm floating around.
With his arm floating around. But even in the really wide shots, that Borg is still there. And I love they were like, nope, they kept really good continuity with that Borg. He's there in all the shots. He's still stood there. I like to think he still stood there, presumably when they get back to Earth. He's still just stuck on the outside of the hull. I wonder, always think like the engineers that were like refitting the Enterprise after this were like, oh, Jesus Christ, there's a bloody Borg out here. Just stuck on the hull.
We've got to go and repair the dish.
Yeah.
Like, as you come around the hull, it's like, fucking hell. It's like...
It's just a bloody Borg.
I do think it's quite funny, the actual... So, in that whole little sequence there's at least sort of like four Borgs that sort of end up just floating off.
Yeah.
And you think, Christ, they could end up anywhere.
I mean, hopefully they'd end up in orbit and just burn up. But
I hope they burn up on re-entry. But Borg are pretty hardy.
We know that the sphere, which looks pretty knackered, here they survive. I'm assuming it's the ones from the sphere because it's bits of sphere everywhere, isn't there? In that in that shot in Enterprise. But yeah, it makes you think. But yeah, of course, Hawk returns now assimilated. Great shot of him as he turns his head, and you see like the other half of his face is all assimilated.
Yeah.
Damages Picard's helmet, but then just in the nick of time, Worf shoots Hulk, who presumably hasn't quite generated shields yet, because he's only just been started to be assimilated. And Hulk also gets sent out into space.
Yeah.
And then they manage to release the deflector with the drones on board. Picard severs the kind of connection cable with a phaser rifle, and then of course Worf says, "Assimilate this," and just blows the thing up.
Yeah, I mean, cheesy but fucking cool.
Oh, it's earned. It's earned.
It's totally earned.
You know, it's earned. So the Queen immediately, obviously, senses this and tells Data that there's a change of plan. Meanwhile, Cochrane is now sober with a massive hangover. He says maybe from the phaser, or maybe from the booze, or maybe both. But they're they're pretty much ready to launch, and this is where Cochrane admits that he's not a hero. He's a drunk, and he just wanted money and girls. That's all he wanted.
I do like. I think we've got to say when they shoot him and stuff, he's talking about the statue, and I love that when Riker turns around to Geordi and goes, "You told him about the statue."
Yeah. Oh Jesus! Why'd you do it? But yeah, so he Riker says the "don't be a great man, just try to be a man," or whatever it is speech.
Yes.
And he asks him who said that, and Riker says, "You did."
Rubbish. Who said that? So you did.
Yeah, rhetorical nonsense, I think he calls it.
Yeah.
But yeah, and Riker kind of reassures him that you.
And I like the way when he says something about is everything ready, and he says something about it, and he says something along the lines like, "Yeah, ready to make history." And I love that face he pulls. It's like great smile and sort of like it's almost a thumbs up gesture. It's great. That's great. I love that.
Yeah. Meanwhile, on the Enterprise, Worf and Picard are talking. The situation is even worse. The Borg are assimilating now Dex 5 as well, 5 and 6.
Now what's his name?
Lieutenant Daniels.
Is it Daniels?
I think so. That's what it says here. I'm assuming.
Oh, he's just down as security officer.
A security man. Yes.
Yeah.
He's
got blood all over him.
He's
like,
fucked up.
That poor bastard's like
he's seen some shit. He's seen some shit.
And Picard basically tells him to get the fuck back out there.
Yeah, he's like, no, you stand your ground.
Hand to hand if you have to. Yeah.
Fight hand to hand if you have to. And it's like, dude, he's not Worf. Like, Worf fight through hand to hand.
Worf is like, you see, even Worf's like, what the fuck?
Well, this is where,
He's
Worf.
a Klingon.
Yeah, Worf's like this is crazy. Like, it's just ridiculous. I think Worf is probably like, look, this isn't a Klingon ship. Like, what are you doing?
No.
Like,
and at this point, Worf is the most rational. He's like,
he is, but again,
look, we're at the point we know what we can do. We're at the point where we can't hold this anymore. We can destroy them. We can destroy them all. We have to destroy the ship. And he's like, no. He's like, we're not doing that. And basically, he calls him a coward.
He calls Worf a coward, and Worf says, if you were any other man, I would kill you where you stand.
Kill you where you stand. And that, in the cinema, that was another moment where it's like, like, fucking hell.
And I like
Worf a coward. It's like, fucking hell.
And it shows that through his experiences in DS9 post TNG, Worf has learned. He's become a commanding officer. He commands people now. He's in charge of people now. And he's grown. He's no longer, because Worf, at the start of TNG would have totally been down with fighting Borg hand to hand. He would have been like, "Yep, let's go fucking do it. Let's fuck him up." But now he has grown
and wouldn't be able to understand why everybody else isn't.
And yet here he is all these years later, and now he is the sensible officer, and he is telling Picard, who is normally the picture of calm and logic, when it comes to and compassion. He's the one to now tell Picard that the once most violent crew member is now the one to tell Picard, what are you doing?
The situation is hopeless. We have a solution and you're not using it.
Picard tells him to fuck off, get the fuck off my bridge. And he goes into the meeting room observation lounge with all those gold ships. I always wanted those gold ships.
I did. Yeah.
You know, like all hung up like that. That'd be so cool.
Yeah, so I mean, you can get them.
I know you can, but you know.
I mean, they cost an arm and a leg, but
My-
you can get them.
My office is full of enough shit.
I know.
I can't be doing that.
I only have little models of the ships, but I don't have an E, and at some point I must buy
I don't
an E.
have an E either. Yeah, I'd like an E. That'd be cool.
But I like that Lily turns round to Crusher, and she's, you know, what you know, what's going on? Why, you know, what kind of, and she says once the decision's made, once you know, Picard said, that's it.
Yeah.
We do what the captain said.
Yeah. Yeah. But of course, Lily's having none of that. I think she walks
like,
in and
fuck
immediately
this
calls him
shit.
a son of a bitch as soon as she walks in the door. She's like, "You son of a bitch." And of course, Picard explains his history with the Borg, that he was once assimilated. And that he has a
perspective.
Yeah. And she brings up Ensign Lynch.
Yeah.
And finally, you know, he says, she says, look, you know, all your crew are terrified, and he's like, the crew are accustomed to following my orders. And she says, Lily says, your crew are probably accustomed to your orders making sense.
Yeah.
Which is a great line. I love Lily in this, by the way. Tremendous character. I love Lily.
Alfie Woodyard, she's fucking awesome.
She is awesome, but she's great in this film, and in this scene particularly. She's the conscience of the film. She's the audience of the film, and she's great. She tells him to blow up the ship. She's like, hey, if you can blow up the ship and kill these things and get away, let's do it. And Picard flips out, symbolically smashing a bunch of the ships in the display case.
Yeah, and he says that I mean, what he says is you know, you think it's kind of true. He says, you know,
well, you can see it from both perspectives,
they
can't you?
assimilate worlds and we pull back. They do this and we pull back. And
this
like,
line no further.
The line has to be drawn this far and no further.
That line, those lines, the line must be drawn here and this far and no further. They are the cheesiest fucking lines, but because it's Patrick Stewart delivering them,
yeah, exactly, yeah,
his acting just sells it. It's like, yeah, I buy it. It's fine. It totally works. If anyone else had said it, it would have been awful. But yeah, so she
and she says, okay, Ahab.
Yeah, she says Captain Ahab has to go hunt his whale, and of course Picard starts quietly reading the passage or reciting the passage from Moby Dick. And of course, she says she never read it, which makes Picard smile.
I like that line though. It's a great line. If his chest had been a cannon, he'd have fired his heart upon it.
Yeah,
it's like brilliant. And she does. I love the way she just looks confused. It's like, what the fuck's he talking about now?
What the hell are you on about, man? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god, he's lost it.
Yeah.
He's fully gone bibble.
Yeah. But yeah.
He explains about, you know, Ahab and the nature of his obsession and how his obsession led to his death and the destruction of his ship.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that he comes to his senses. He realizes, you know, she's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That he has an opportunity to save his crew. He doesn't have to.
Yeah.
So the crew don't have to go down with the ship. You know.
And he heads out onto the bridge, and he tells them that you know, we're going to evacuate the Enterprise. And I think is it Crusher that asks? Oh no, I think he comes up in a little bit when Crusher asks if there'll ever be another Enterprise, and Picard says there's plenty more letters in the alphabet.
Plenty more letters in the alphabet.
Love that line. That's tremendous. I actually got worried in the cinema when this bit happened. In hindsight, I shouldn't have, because it's like, obviously they wouldn't be able to get home. But I was like, don't you dare blow this, because I was really worried that Star Trek might become the let's blow up the ship every movie. Which would have really annoyed me, but luckily they don't. So yeah.
No, we didn't get to the point where every episode we got to blow the ship up, sort of thing. No.
Yeah, not yet.
No.
But then, of course, so he orders an evacuation, and meanwhile,
we get that very uncomfortable apology to
Worf. Yes, some. I regret some of the words. And what's like some? Yeah, and of course he apologizes and says he's the bravest man he's ever known.
Bravest man he's ever met. It's like, you know.
Yeah. And then more.
You could almost feel a tear welling up.
Almost. So at the launch site, Riker, LaForge, and Cochrane are about to launch when something terrible happens, and Cochrane has lost a key component of the launch.
They're I also like that. There's a red light on this thing, and he
just hits it. Like, that's fine.
Don't worry about it.
Isn't it like the? It's like a pre-launch. It's something like a booster or something. It's like a really important thing as well. I think it's like a separation booster or something. It's like fuck it, it'll be fine. Don't worry about it, buddy.
Probably explode and take the whole shit down. So
yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Just ignore it.
But yeah, so they head off.
He's like, we have to abort this. It's like, no, I got it.
And it turns
it's like green
mini disc
or something. It's like puts it in a thing and you get magic carpet right playing.
Oh, what a song!
Like, now you're talking.
You've made up for Ooby Dooby. Yeah.
Yeah, you made up for Ooby Dooby there.
I feel embarrassed. I feel embarrassed at the end of this movie that the Vulcans, the first music they hear is Ooby Dooby.
Oh God, yeah.
Like Magic Carpet Ride, I'd be proud of, but Ooby Dooby, not so much.
It's Ooby Dooby, not so much.
No, but anyway, they take off, and meanwhile on board the Enterprise, they are given instructions to head to an isolated island and stay out of history's way. And he tells Lily that if you see Commander Riker or any of the other command staff, please give them this as instructions. And of course, she realizes that he's not coming, and she's almost like, at first she's angry. She's like, because Captain Ahab again, you're still doing.
We thought we'd been through this. Yeah, we thought we'd, And he says no. He says once upon a time there was there's a crew member here that. When I was in trouble, they did what they could to rescue me and bring me back. I'm basically just doing that. Yeah,
and of course she says, "Go find your friend," which again is a nice line. Is the delivery of the line as well is really nice, where she's like, "Go find your friend."
And he gives like a kiss on the cheek, doesn't he? Or is that later?
I think it's here. It might be here. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's a lovely moment. And then of course, Picard heads down to engineering. Meanwhile, the Phoenix makes it to orbit, and the nacelles come out. Because I was wondering the whole movie, I was like, well, it doesn't look like a warp ship. And then of course when they get up there, the classic TOS nacelles looking very classic looking.
I love that shot of the things like exploding out and the nacelles and
it's that immediate like, it's the TOS nacelles as well. It's very TOS looking. It's perfect. It's like that's so good. That's how you do prequels. That's how you do it.
Well, this is another thing that I forgot to point out earlier on when we first started talking, is that the Frakes was given the directing job here. They asked Scott and McTiernan and they both turned them down. And they felt that they needed someone who knew Star Trek.
Yeah.
So Frakes had already directed loads of episodes.
Yes.
So they basically went to him because he was the most knowledgeable about Star Trek. And you think, yes, that's how you fucking do it. You get someone who's knowledgeable about fucking Star Trek to fucking direct.
Absolutely, and someone with a passion for it and who loves it and who loves the fan base. Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the cast had directed episodes, probably all of them. But I think Riker had done more than anyone else.
I think Burton's did quite a few. I think Spiner's done some as well. I'm not sure whether
Stewart did one for sure. Yeah, Stewart did one because there's that funny anecdote about. He asked Frakes to get down on his knees because he wanted a certain angle and he couldn't get it right. So he asked Jonathan Frakes to get down on his knees to film a scene. Patrick Stewart asked him as a favour. He's like, I really want to get it from this angle, but I can't quite get it. Do you mind acting on your knees? And he did it for him, and he was like, it just shows how good of a friend you are,
Yeah.
Or colleague.
Because again, we pointed out a while ago when we were watching Picard, and you forget how big Frakes is.
Oh,
Frakes
he's not just tall, actually, he's a big dude all round. He is a big dude. Yeah, big dude. By the way, you can always tell when we're doing a Star Trek episode. We're not even finished yet, and we're over 2 hours. any other movie, we would have been done like 30 minutes ago, because of Star Trek. We're like, we're still going.
They like rambling on.
I love it. But anyway, they're flying into space, getting ready to go to warp, and of course Cochrane looks out and he sees the shadow come over the console, and he's like, Jesus Christ! He sees the Enterprise, and I love this perfect contrast where you get Riker, who, like you said, silently probably shitting himself right now, is don't worry, I'm sure they're just here to give us a send-off.
A send-off, yeah.
And then we immediately...
Never mind the possibility that that ship is all full of Borg.
And weapons. And then of course we cut to engineering. Where Picard comes face to face with the Borg Queen and remembers that she was there during his assimilation all those years ago. He questions how she can be there, because obviously the Borg cube was destroyed, and she mentions you think in 3 dimensions. You only think in 3 dimensions.
I think they sort of said that most Borg cubes kind of have a version of her.
Yeah, there is something like that, isn't there?
Sort of put together.
Yeah. But yeah, so like I said, this kind of ruins the need for Locutus or anything. It kind of, it's not good. It's not good. It is my main criticism of this film, if I'm honest, is this and the time travel element is kind of awkward. But for the sake of a great movie, you look past it, because it's a great movie.
Yeah, and because this is a great movie.
It is. It really is.
And I do like the whole. There is the tension's really well done here, where you think, Christ, are they just going to assimilate him, or what are their plans here? Because they're not. They haven't straight up just done it.
No. This is where the Queen falls further for me, and I like her even less. Is where it turns out that the Borg kind of almost fancies Picard, and that she wanted him to submit willingly, and he thinks that was part of it. And she's like, I assimilated countless civilizations, you were no different. And Picard says, now you're the one that's lying, and then obviously she has feelings for Locutus, and it's all a bit like, oh god, this is a bit cringe now. Luckily it doesn't last long. Picard says that he will give himself willingly, but free Data. But then of course it turns out Data, now with skin on his half of his face, says no, he doesn't want. And he says he doesn't want to leave. And of course the Queen then says, as you can see, I've already got an equal. I don't need you anymore. And of course Data says that Picard will make an excellent drone. She tells Data to lock onto the Phoenix. To deactivate the auto-destruct first, and he does that. And then she.
3 quantum torpedoes at the Phoenix.
Yeah, and at this point, Riker must just be like, oh no. He's like, don't worry, I'm sure it's fine. Well, they probably can't even see it, to be honest. There's no sensors on the bloody thing. So.
But the thing is, though, is it's one of those sort of like weird inconsistencies with the torpedoes and things. Because when in things like Wrath of Khan and things, when the torpedoes go past the ship, the whole ship fucking shakes.
Oh yeah.
They you feel the not the impact, but the wake of the torpedoes.
Yeah.
And you think 3 fucking
quantum torpedoes. Yeah.
Going past a ship that's basically made of like tin,
held together with bubble gum. I mean, that thing it's shaking the whole time. That ship is really rickety and
Yeah, you think even it. I mean, obviously it's a psych. It's the torpedoes head for the ship and they go past.
Yeah.
But you do sort of think, fucking hell, they would have felt that, surely.
You would have thought. You would have thought.
But it's fine. It's like, okay.
But yeah, so the Queen immediately turns screaming Data, and Data, of course, says resistance is futile, and then punctures the plasma coolant tanks, releasing the deadly gas, and Data disappears into the gas. The Queen, Picard climbs up and grabs the Queen's
he basically
tubes.
climbs up the thing and of
the tubes.
Table and gets onto the tubes.
Yeah, grabs
and
the tubes.
She starts grabbing his leg.
Mm-hmm.
Starts trying to pull him down.
Yeah, but then of course Data
emerges from the plasma and basically pulls her into it.
Yeah.
Guy basically swings to safety, as it were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then removes the gas.
You see the sort of the melting.
Oh yeah, it's a great shot, isn't it? Where her
really
face just melts down to a skeleton. It's great. I love the voice, the vocal change they make with her as she's like falling apart. It's great.
Yeah.
It's quite a gory, not gory, but by Star Trek standards, and well, up until the new fucking shite.
There's a lot there's a lot of this movie. There's a lot more sort of frightening stuff than I think in any of the other.
There's horror elements in this one for sure.
Yeah. I think probably the most horror you've got before now is the worm bits in 3.
Yeah.
With Christopher Lloyd squishing the giant squishy worm. Oh, and of course
the earworms.
The earworm. That's the most terrifying Star Trek thing. Yeah, I take it back. That's more terrifying.
I think those earworm things scare me more than assimilation, if I'm honest. There's something about ears, like something going in your it looks so painful and horrible. It just looks gross. Ugh. Disgusting. Yeah. But anyway, the Queen's dead, and the gas is removed because you press some buttons and then it all disappears because it's the future. Good ventilation. And of course, the Phoenix goes to warp, and they come out of warp and turn around, and Cochrane is this is where Cochrane, I guess, becomes the Cochrane that they know. He looks back at Earth and he's like, it's so small, and he can't believe it. And of course, Riker says it's about to get a lot bigger as they head back.
Riker says that should be enough. We can power down now, sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It should be enough to get their attention.
Yeah. And then, of course, Picard. You see Picard pick up the remains of the Borg Queen and sever the spinal column.
Yeah.
And then he hears Data. And he looks around, and Data's there with half his face missing and
broken, like all his lights blinking and things.
Yeah. Oh, that was something I didn't mention that I really like about the Borg Queen. The Borg Queen's got like little diodes under the skin that blink and stuff. That makeup job is impeccable. It's an impeccable makeup job.
Stunning makeup. I mean, all the sort of things. Apparently, there's some of the like the with you. I did actually notice this one. One of the eyepieces is a TIE fighter cockpit lens.
Is it?
Yeah.
I didn't notice that.
They use a TIE fighter cockpit lens. Yeah, it's when the Borg are fixing up one of the crew.
Yeah.
And they place the lens on it on this.
I had not noticed that.
One's face, and it's like, and even more than that, which I still haven't spotted it.
Is this the Millennium Falcon?
Yeah, the Falcon's apparently in the beginning fight scene.
It's right in the background. It's blurred and right in the background.
Yeah, I presumed it would be.
Yeah, there's some it's been retconned now to be a ship, I think, but obviously,
yeah.
But yeah, I believe it was the Falcon. That happens a lot. I always remember in the Battlestar Galactica miniseries, the initial miniseries. There's like the Enterprise and all sorts in that fleet. When you get the wide shots of the fleet, the Enterprise is in there. I think the Millennium Falcon's probably in there, all blurred and in the background of this massive fleet, but they're all there.
Well, the other one, the Blade Runner, isn't it?
Yeah.
Building. The Falcon's on one of the buildings in the cities, sure.
Yeah, I think there's a shot in Battlestar as well in the miniseries. I think it's when Laura Roslin gets her cancer diagnosis. The Serenity.
It's the Serenity's
Serenity's taken off.
Yeah.
Which is another great shot. But anyway, it's by the by. But yeah, anyway, we have a lovely moment with Picard and Data Data says he presumes he looks worse than he feels and kind of laughs as he says feels.
Yeah, and then he I like that. And I love it. He says,
I was tempted by her offer.
I was tempted by her offer, and he says, how long for? And he says, 0.68 seconds. And it's like, to an android, that's an eternity.
Yeah. Well, you think, they process this thing so much faster. It's kind of, it's funny. But yeah, and meanwhile, in Montana, later in Montana, because Picard's like, I know that the more people we send down is breaking the Prime Directive and damaging the timeline even more, but I've got to be there. I can't have first contact happen and not be there. So, of course, most of the bloody crew of the Enterprise is down there, or at least the bridge crew. And they see the Vulcans arrive, and Riker says, they're going to want to meet the man who flew that warp ship. And of course, we get the wonderful Vulcan salute, followed by Cochrane failing to separate his fingers. And he just shakes his hand and says thanks. Now, this brings me on to a point that I've got to say, one of the greatest openings to a Star Trek ever. The redone opening for the Mirror Universe episode of Enterprise, with this scene where Cochrane shoots the Vulcan. I love that shot so much. And then you get the whole the evil intro of Enterprise, where we see like the alternate history. So good.
That's fantastic.
Good. One of my favorite openings to a Star Trek episode ever. It's great because you even get the music. You get the first contact music and everything, and then it all just goes dark. It's like, oh my god,
it just goes tits up.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But yeah, anyway.
Though he's not named in the credits or anything, that apparently is Sulkar.
Who's Sulkar?
Sulkar is Spock's grandfather.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's not mentioned in this, but it is mentioned.
Is it in canon? Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Didn't know that.
And so he's Sulkar and he's Spock's grandfather. So which is like, that's cool. I like that. That's that. I mean, you do sort of think, is there more than one Vulcan family in Star Trek universe? But it's fine. I still like it. I mean, it kind of makes sense that if Sulkar has a relationship with humans, it makes sense that Sarek would end up with a human.
Yes. Yeah.
To produce Spock, so that kind of does make sense.
It does, it works. It's it's such a good ending. And then of course, he plays Ooby Dooby to the Vulcan as Picard and whatnot beam up. They weren't detected, and we get the captain's log that the voyage of the Phoenix was a success again. The alien ship detected the warp signature and it's on its rendezvous with history. I love that it's captain's log April 5th 2063 because he couldn't figure out the star date. He's like, I don't know what the star date would be, so I guess fuck it. Unless there probably wasn't a star date. I don't know. I guess there might not be a star date at that point.
I don't know when star dates start, but I guess not until at least Enterprise, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess there'd be a before first contact, after first contact star date, like we get. But yeah, anyway, so on board the Enterprise, Picard obviously tells Worf that he suspects their future will be waiting for them as they get there. We get the lovely line. The I envy you lines between Picard and Lily, which I really like. Those lines where she's like, I envy you the future you're going to, or something like that, and he says, I envy you the future you've got to come, the things, the change you're about to see. It's good. It's good Star Trek. Nice to have some good Star Trek.
I know. I think that's what I was slightly worried about watching this.
That you wouldn't like it as much as you remember.
Because I've watched a lot of Star Trek since Picard, but no Next Gen.
Okay.
I've kind of avoided Next Gen because
It's still
I
great. It's still great.
I was kind of worried that Picard might have retroactively ruined it for me.
Yeah, like the sequel trilogy kind of has for me with Star Wars. Like I still love the original trilogy, but I have not watched any Star Wars since watching not the Last Jedi, whatever it was, Rise of Skywalker. Haven't watched a single Star Wars thing since then.
No, I have.
I don't really feel the need to either. But I've seen clips. Because they were like, "Oh, look, it's Luke Skywalker." I've seen that clip.
I have. Yeah, I have.
But I haven't watched episodes of things. So
no, I've seen all of Mandalorian, which.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen Mandalorian.
I mean, I think it's worth it.
I hear it's good. It is good. I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will watch this eventually. You know.
It was actually, you know, kind of as soon as Picard turned up, it was just like, no, it's old Picard. It still felt good.
It's a great movie, and and like I said, I watched this last year. I watched all the Star Trek movies. In fact, I watched all of Star Trek during the pandemic because I went back from TOS and did all the way through to the end.
Well, I did. I just avoided Next Gen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's fair enough. Yeah, I did everything in order as close as I could. But the thing is, there's a difference, isn't there? Because like I watch things like First Contact, and I've seen First Contact so many times that when I say I watch it, but I'm fucking around with my phone, I'm doing whatever else. It's on in the background. There's a big difference between doing that and then doing a show like this, where it's like I'm going to watch it and watch it again, like I'm watching it for the first time. Take it all in. And there's always that fear of like, oh God, what if I don't like it even more, you know, or if I have more issues. But I didn't. I actually had less issues. I actually think this is aged really well. I think my misgivings about the Borg Queen aside, I think this is great.
I think we've been quite lucky in general about the movies that we do deep dives on.
Yeah.
That
it's almost like we choose good ones.
Gone back. I mean, we do choose good ones.
But you mean we haven't accidentally come across one that we're like, oh no, this isn't good at all? I forgot.
Yeah, we haven't chosen one yet that has the potential that actually it might not be as good as we remember.
That's true.
We haven't had that yet, which is so. And I guess this one could have been like that.
I was worried this one would be, because I always remember having the issue with the Borg Queen. But like I said, this film isn't the problem. It's a lot of what came after this film. So I don't like the Borg Queen. That's my biggest criticism of this film. I think it's unnecessary, and I think it ruins the Borg. And it retroactively ruins Best of Both Worlds. But what I really dislike...
It does change the whole... It changes the whole nature of the Borg, which is...
Absolutely.
And not for the good, really.
No, for the bad. Way bad. They were way scarier when they were just a hive mind.
A lot less scary. Yeah, it makes them a lot less scary.
They humanized them, which is terrible. I don't want them to be humanized. I want them to be this horrendous hive mind. That was so interesting, and it's ruined now.
Yeah.
But that aside, most of my gripes, or the gripes I thought I had with this film, I don't have with this film. It's the legacy of this film. Yeah. Like... In this movie, it makes sense for Picard to be the way he is in this movie because of the Borg and his history with them. But it started that trend of him doing it in the other movies, and then we end up with him bloody driving around in a desert in a buggy and stupid shit like that. And I hate the Borg Queen. I do hate it in this, but it gets way worse in Voyager. Voyager took this and went mental with it, and everything was Borg, and it was like destroy 5 Borg cubes with one shot. No, it's not that bad, but you know what I mean. It gets bad.
It's also the fact that the Borg Queen itself is actually kind of cool, though.
The design's
awesome. She's really cool. It's just that she just fucks up the Borg. It's one of those weird.
Do you know what? Oh my god! I just thought of something that would have actually made me okay with it.
What's that?
I would have been okay with it if they had it in dialogue that she was like the backup for Locutus. They were like, we had another human that we were going to use.
We made a new one.
Or no, we were going to use her, but then we got you, so we didn't bother. But then after you were killed, we used her, and now she's like the backup version, you know.
I think in the season of Enterprise that we didn't get, I think they were going to explain her origins.
Okay.
I think she was gonna have been from that time. I think the Borg Queen was gonna have been from there.
Actually, so, do you know, I was so sure. I remember when they announced that the Borg were going to appear on Enterprise, and I was like, fuck you. You are going to ruin everything. Do you know what? I really like that two-parter. It's really
they
good.
handled it really well, actually.
Really good. And the fact that they don't ruin canon.
Even the episode with the bloody Ferengi was like, fucking hell, why are they using the Ferengi? And it's like, well, no, they actually did. They never mention who they are. They don't sort of, they're an unknown species, so
it's fine.
They kind of got away from
it. The only ones I really have an issue with is the superhumans with the Sing group. Those two parters with Brent Spiner is his descendant and stuff. That was a bit too far for me. But the Borg stuff, they did it really well, and it's left to where it's like, oh, so the Borg might have been coming that whole time because they got that one signal out. They got that signal out from Enterprise. Great, good stuff. I'm so glad we went back and rewatched Enterprise, because I was sure that was not as good as I remember. That's an example of a show I've gone back to and gone, oh my god, this is actually great. Like, most of this is really good.
Jesus Christ, for me, it's the same thing as the prequels. For me, it's like, those things are fucking, like, art compared to the fucking, the sequels.
Very true. Very true.
I think Enterprise, I know initially there was a lot of sort of, oh, this is changing too much. This is too. Now you just think, actually, it's really respectful. It's well done. It's a great show. And I will say, as soon as I finished First Contact, I watched the Carbon Creek episode.
Oh, nice.
I thought, I'm going to watch the Carbon Creek episode because that kind of leads into this.
It does, in
a way.
Yeah.
It's the actual first contact between Vulcans and humans.
Yeah.
I really love that story. I think
it's a great story.
It's a really nice little episode.
Very good. Yeah.
So I thought I'm going to watch that. So I watched that, and it still holds up. I think it's a great episode.
Yeah. But anyway, that was First Contact. Highly recommended. A great, probably a good. It's not the movie I would recommend you start Star Trek with. If you want, but it is the movie I would recommend starting. If you wanted to start with Next Gen and you wanted to start with a movie, this would be the movie I would recommend. I would always probably say Wrath of Khan.
They almost do a good job, because I think they did try to make this movie almost like a standalone.
It works because you've got Lily as the human aspect. She's the audience, and
it mostly works. I think they did a pretty good job of making it almost. You don't really need all the other backstory stuff. It works. So on that level, it does work. And as I said last week when we were talking about this movie, I think it's the last of the good ones.
For sure.
The last genuinely good movie.
Insurrection is another one where it's like, do you know, it's very Star Trek. It feels like Star Trek. My main issue with Insurrection is that it's been done before. It's the same story they did before. They've already done this in an episode of TNG, and then they just made it again but stretched it over like a movie length, and it just doesn't hold up very well at all.
Really nice scenes. I like the whole idea. That
you can tell they had a much less budget for that movie.
Yeah.
Just let's walk around the old, quarries.
I like the idea that these bad guys, they're the same race. They're the same people. They've come back.
Yeah.
And they've altered. They've kept themselves alive in really unpleasant and unfortunate ways. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's good.
That's a nice thing, but overall, that movie's it's not a great movie.
No, it's. I must admit, of the Next Gen movies, it is the one I watched the least.
Nemesis is the one I've seen the least. I think I've only seen Nemesis twice.
I've seen it more than that, but every time I watch it, I'm like, oh, this is not good.
It's one that I keep meaning to go back to, and I'll never get.
It's got some really naff moments, and the end is just Wrath of Khan. Because Wrath of Khan works, let's put them in a nebula and do Wrath of Khan again. Oh God, again.
Yeah.
Okay. But no, First Contact, highly recommended from both of us. I think that's fair to say. So don't know what we'll do next, but next time we will be back with our usual review show. So thank you for listening, everybody, and we will catch you next time.